Chapter 259. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more fully. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all the novels that you can't find online. Everyone was surprised to see him sit next to Xiao Lulang instead of his own seat. However, on second thought, he left early last night and sat late today. He probably didn't hear the rumors about Xiao Lulang. He also came from a poor family and didn't know the rules of the seats. He probably thought that the top scholar and the second scholar sat on opposite sides. This was the tragedy of poor students. They couldn't see the situation clearly and didn't understand the rules. They didn't know when they offended someone. However, everyone hated Xiao Lulang the most. They didn't hate Ning Ziyuan that much. Ning Ziyuan had neither looks nor background. Compared to Xiao Lulang, he wasn't even worth mentioning. Everyone quickly turned their cold gazes to Xiao Lulang again. They whispered to each other from time to time, mostly criticizing Xiao Lulang. Xiao Lulang sat upright on the cushion. He didn't seem to hear it, but he also seemed to ignore it. The hall was noisy, but his figure was a bit thin. Ning Ziyuan took a sip of tea and suddenly said to him, "I went to the Ministry of Rights to check the test papers. I read your essay. You are indeed worthy of being the top scholar. Don't worry about other people's opinions. Royal Prince An also did a good job in his essay, but compared to you, he lacked a bit of innocence. I think that's what really moved His Majesty. On the other hand, my essay wasn't as good as Yuan Yu's, but in the end I got third place and he got fourth. Maybe it's because Yuan Yu is the grandson of Grand Secretary Yuan. It's easy for him to get ahead. For a poor student like me, if I don't get into the top 3, I have almost no hope of getting a meteoric rise." Xiao Lulang looked at Ning Ziyuan in surprise. He had threatened him so much yesterday, but he could still say this to him. It seemed that he wasn't unaware of the rumors. Xiao Lulang looked away. "You still have the guts to sit here and talk to me. Aren't you afraid of getting yourself into trouble?" Ning Ziyuan was silent for a while before he said in a low voice, "If it weren't for you, I would be the one being ostracized." Ning Ziyuan was also born into a poor family. Unlike Xiao Lulang, who was favored by a wealthy family, he had no one to back him up. If he was ostracized, he might not be able to stay in the capital anymore. Xiao Liulang's results were better than his, and his halo was bigger than his. He attracted everyone's jealousy, and almost no one had the time to ostracize him. "Hang in there." Ningji took a deep breath and said, "Otherwise if you fall I'll be next." Xiao Lulang, who was almost touched by him. After the emperor came over, everyone was silent. When the emperor saw Prince An's seat, he didn't say anything. After he sat down, he had the musicians play the song Dear Cry. Then all the scholars chanted the song Dear Cry together. Finally, he selected 3 scholars to each write a poem, which set off the academic atmosphere very well. The meals for the Dear Cry banquet were all prepared by the imperial kitchen. This was much more sumptuous than the simple meals on the day of the small exam and the court examination. Many people had never eaten palace food in their lives. Today was probably their first and last time. Even though the emperor's power was terrifying, they still ate with relish. After all, it was really too delicious. The emperor left after a while, leaving the scene to the officials of the Ministry of Rights. Near evening, the banquet ended, and the scholars left one by one. Xiao Lulang, Feng Lin, and the other 3 walked out of the Hall of Supreme Harmony. Not long after they left, a eunuch came over with a smile. "Excuse me, is this Xiao Zhuangyuan?" Xiao Lulang looked at him indifferently. "Who are you?" The eunuch smiled. "My surname is Huang. I am the Crown Prince's servant. The Crown Prince wants to see Xiao Zhuangyuan. Please come to the Eastern Palace." Xiao Lulang paused. "Why does the Crown Prince want to see me?" The eunuch smiled. "I am just a messenger. If Xiao Zhuangyuan has any questions, you can ask the Crown Prince face to face." Du Ruhan frowned. He couldn't refuse the Crown Prince's summons. Feng Lin was very happy. "Lulang, the Crown Prince wants to see you." "Yes, I know." Xiao Lulang nodded. He said to the eunuch, "Please lead the way." The eunuch made a gesture of invitation. "Xiao Zhuangyuan, please. You go back first, no need to wait for me." Lu Quan will come to pick me up in a while. Xiao Lulang finished speaking and walked towards the eastern palace with the eunuch. Feng Lin smiled and said, "The crown prince has heard of Liulong's talent and wants to win over Lulang, right?" He couldn't be blamed for thinking so. The crown prince was Marquis Xuanping's nephew. If Xiao Lulang looked like Marquis Xuanping's son, then wouldn't he look like the crown prince's cousin? They were a family. Du Ruhan curled his lips and said, "The crown prince married his cousin's fiancée. Who knows how the crown prince will feel when he sees someone who looks like his cousin?" Feng Lin trembled. I forgot about that. The capital, the Lu residence. The once magnificent Lu residence had long been confiscated. Now the Lu residence was squeezed into a small shabby house. Although it was called the Lu residence, it was only left with one master, Lu Yisheng. There was also a mute slave and an old woman who was too old to do anything. When Gu Jiao stepped into the Lu residence, Lu Yisheng was squatting on the ground. He was using an old brush soaked in water to practice writing on a broken stone slab he picked up from outside. He didn't have money to buy a pen and paper, so he could only practice in this way. When he saw a small figure suddenly appear in the courtyard, he was slightly startled. A trace of embarrassment flashed in his eyes, but it was replaced by self-mockery in an instant. He was already lowly to the dust. What dignity did he have to speak of? He continued to practice, ignoring Gu Jiao. The mute slave in the courtyard vigilantly grabbed a stick and stood in front of Lu Yisheng. It seemed that Lu Yisheng was often bullied. Lu Yisheng smiled coldly. "Back down, Anu. You can't beat her." Anu didn't back down. He stared at Gu Jiao like a tiger watching its prey. He was young, about the same age as Gu Xiaoshan. Gu Jiao took a piece of candy from her pocket and handed it to him. "Do you want to eat?" Anu's eyes lit up. He drooled, but he didn't go forward. Instead, he stood his ground. Lu Yisheng sneered. "Go ahead and eat. If she wants to kill you, she doesn't have to go through so much trouble." Anu hesitated for a while before putting down the stick. Like a little monkey, he grabbed the candy that Gu Jiao handed to him. It was as if he would be killed by Gu Jiao if he was a second slower. After he took the candy, he took a small bite of it and put the rest into his pocket. "What are you doing here?" Lu Yisheng asked. "Here's your medicine." Gu Jiao threw a bundle of medicine to him. "It's the last course of treatment. But I don't feel pain anymore." He was referring to his cholecystitis. "You have to take it even if it doesn't hurt. This is the treatment," Gu Jiao said. Lu Yisheng said, "I don't have money." Gu Jiao said, "I know you don't have money. Sell me the information, and I won't charge you for the medicine." Neither of them mentioned the bet or the hairpin, as if they had both forgotten about it. Lu Yisheng's hand, which was practicing calligraphy, paused. "What information do you want?" Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows. "Did your Lu family really rebel?" Lu Yisheng chuckled. "So what if they did? So what if they didn't?" Gu Jiao rubbed her chin. "If they did rebel, they should know a lot about the imperial palace. For example, do you know how to enter the imperial palace?" Lu Yisheng was speechless. Meanwhile, eunuch Huang was leading Xiao Lulang to the eastern palace. Just as they were about to pass by the imperial garden, Xiao Lulang suddenly stopped in his tracks. Eunuch Huang asked, "Scholar Xiao, what's the matter?" "Nothing." He thought he heard a cat meow. It was a very faint sound, but it made his hair stand on end. Eunuch Huang smiled. "If there's nothing else, let's go quickly. Don't keep the crown prince waiting." Xiao Lulang nodded with an indifferent expression. Not far away, a white cat was lying on a banyan tree. It was happily gnawing on the dried fish on the tree. The two of them passed through the imperial garden. Just as they were about to pass by the banyan tree, a young palace maid suddenly ran over from the other entrance of the imperial garden. "Aya, not good, not good. Someone's coming." Xiao Lulang turned around. Eunuch Huang frowned. He pointed at a young eunuch beside him and said, "Go and see what's going on. I'll bring Scholar Xiao to see His Highness." "Yes." The young eunuch quickly left. Unexpectedly, the young palace maid pushed him aside and ran all the way to Eunuch Huang. She fell to her knees. "Eunuch Huang, it's great that you're here. I beg you, please save His Highness." His Highness is about to die. Who's she? Xiao Lulang asked Eunuch Huang. Eunuch Huang was furious. He tried to break free from the young palace maid, but she hugged his leg tightly. Eunuch Huang, please save His Highness. Eunuch Huang was flustered and exasperated. How can I manage His Highness? You have to report this to His Majesty. The young palace maid cried. If I could see His Majesty, why would I beg you? Please take me to see the Crown Prince. Although His Highness is a hostage, he's still a prince of Chun State. You can't just ignore him. His Highness has been sick for a long time. What happened? Princess Ning, who was taking a walk near the Imperial Garden, also heard the commotion. She slowly walked over with the help of a servant. Noble consort Zhuang valued Princess Ning's pregnancy very much. She especially asked the emperor for grace to allow her to raise the fetus in her everlasting palace. Eunuch Huang saw noble consort Zhuang walking over, and looked at the banyan tree not far away. A dark light flashed through his eyes. He secretly cursed the young palace maid for ruining things. If a hostage of Chun State is sick, then so be it. He's here as a hostage, not as a prince. Don't you know that? He was so angry. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel will be updated even faster. Millions of novels can be read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet can be found here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896422826/11284294. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 260. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. This servant greets Princess Ning. Eunuch Huang bowed. The little maid hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed. Greetings, Princess Ning. Xiao Lulang saluted Princess Ning with his hands folded in front of his chest. He looked calm and magnanimous. Xiao Lulang was wearing the top scorer's uniform, so it was easy to recognize him. However, Princess Ning had never seen the young Marquis of Zhaodu. In addition, noble consort Zhuang didn't tell her about the outside world in order to let her take care of the fetus. Therefore, she didn't know about the rumors about the new top scorer for the time being. Princess Ning nodded politely. After all, he was an outsider, so it was inconvenient for her to have too much contact with him. Her eyes fell on the little maid kneeling on the ground. I remember you are the maid of the 6th prince of the Chun State. Did something happen to your prince? The little palace maid sobbed and said, in reply to Princess Ning, His Highness the 6th prince is sick and no imperial doctor has come to treat him. I'm worried that if this goes on, His Highness the 6th prince will get sick. Princess Ning's hand gently touched her belly. A trace of complexity flashed through her eyes. You go back first. I will report this to my mother. It was fine if she didn't encounter this kind of thing. But if she did, she couldn't ignore it. Moreover, she should consider it as accumulating good karma for the child in her belly. Yes. Yes. Thank you, Princess Ning. The little maid kowtowed a few times, thanked her, and got up to leave. Princess Ning also left the imperial garden accompanied by the maid. Farewell, Princess Ning. Eunuch Huang bowed. He didn't straighten up until Princess Ning disappeared at the end of the path. He smiled at Xiao Lulang and said, Xiao Lulang, this way please. Xiao Lulang nodded and continued to walk in the direction of the East Palace with Eunuch Huang. Xiao Lulang noticed that when they passed by the tall banyan tree, Eunuch Huang glanced at the tree intentionally or unintentionally, as if he was looking for something. However, there was nothing on the tree. Xiao Lulang retracted his gaze. For some reason, he had a feeling that he had dodged a calamity. It was very strange. After Princess Ning returned to the palace, she reported her encounter with the little palace maid of the Chun State to noble consort Zhuang. Noble consort Zhuang hated the hostage of the Chun State, because the children of the Zhuang family had been taken hostage in the Qin state and suffered a lot in the Qin state. She wanted the hostage of the Qin state to experience the pain that Commandery Prince and had suffered. However, she was only thinking about it in her heart. She wasn't that stupid to actually do anything. Noble consort Zhuang went to the imperial study and told the emperor about the serious illness of the Qin state's hostage. The emperor instructed eunuch Wei to arrange for an imperial physician to go over. Lu family house. The sun was shining brightly. Lu Yixing sat on a small bench in the front yard and made hemp rope. A new and the old woman were weaving baskets on the side. This was the main source of income for the family. A basket could be sold for 10 copper coins, and a hemp rope could be sold for 1 copper coin. If they were lucky, they could make 4 baskets a day and make 10 hemp ropes, which was 50 copper coins. However, because Lu Yixing was often bullied, there was no guarantee that he could work every day. There were 2 people sitting across from Lu Yixing. One was Gu Jiao, who was stroking the white cat, and the other was a young man in a blue robe. The young man's eyebrows and eyes were somewhat similar to Lu Yixing's. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to see it. The young man was handsome. He was a bit less exquisite than Lu Yixing, but he could still be considered an elegant and handsome man. His luxurious clothes didn't fit in with the dilapidated courtyard, and he didn't look like the down-and-out Lu Yixing at all. However, such a person was sitting on a rattan chair, playing with the fan in his hand while leisurely talking to Lu Yixing. "You finally contacted me," he said with a smile. Lu Yixing was sweating profusely from making hemp rope. It wasn't clear whether he didn't have time to talk to him, or whether he was too lazy to talk to him. The young man didn't get angry. He opened his folding fan, fanned himself, and closed it with a snap. He looked at Gu Jiao and asked, "Who is she?" "Doctor." Lu Yixing finally spoke. His eyes were fixed on the hemp rope in his hand. He didn't look at the person he was talking to, but he guessed that he was asking about Gu Jiao. The young man patted his palm with his folding fan and said meaningfully, "There are still doctors who are willing to talk to you these days? Not ordinary doctors, right?" Between the lines, it was clear that he knew Lu Yixing's situation like the back of his hand. Gu Jiao was happily stroking the cat. She turned her head and looked at the young man indifferently. "Of course I'm not an ordinary doctor. I'm a miracle doctor." The young man was speechless. Do all the women from the Zhao kingdom like to flatter themselves so much? "Do you know who he is?" the young man asked Gu Jiao this time. "Lu Yixing." Gu Jiao continued stroking the cat. The young man smiled and pointed at Lu Yixing with his folding fan. "He's my cousin." "Huh." Gu Jiao blinked. This young man was none other than the 6th prince of the Qin kingdom, who had pretended to be ill in the palace. Gu Jiao had planned to sneak into the palace herself, but Lu Yixing said that she couldn't enter, but she could send news in. Not long after, the man who claimed to be the 6th prince of the Qin kingdom came to Lu Yixing with the white cat he had caught. Gu Jiao looked at Lu Yixing. "You're from the Qin kingdom?" Oh, was it really okay to tell her such an important thing? Gu Jiao's reaction was calmer than the 6th prince had expected. However, she wasn't surprised when he told her his identity, so the 6th prince was relieved. She was a calm and collected little girl. Gu Jiao continued stroking the cat. "Why aren't you leaving?" Lu Yixing said to the 6th prince. The 6th prince smiled. "It's rare for you to contact me. How can I not come and stay for a while? I almost thought that you wouldn't contact me for the rest of your life." As he spoke, he turned to look at Gu Jiao, not hiding his relationship with Lu Yixing at all. "I came to the Zhao kingdom as a hostage to persuade him to go back with me. He won't listen to me. You might as well help me persuade him." "Gu Jiao, I really don't want to know so much. Anu, see the guest out." Lu Yixing didn't even look up as he ordered the guest to leave. Anu put down the basket she was weaving halfway, got up, and came to the 6th prince's side. She bowed to him and motioned for him to leave. The 6th prince, who had come to this shabby place, was actually kicked out. The 6th prince helplessly patted the rattan chair and left with a sigh. The white cat was too cute. It was chubby, and its fur was soft and shiny. Gu Jiao was very satisfied with stroking it. The white cat was also very comfortable. It lay on Gu Jiao's lap with its 4 paws in the air, exposing its most vulnerable belly to Gu Jiao. Lu Yixing didn't ask Gu Jiao to leave. He continued to knit the hemp rope for a while and suddenly said, "My mother is from the Qin kingdom." Gu Jiao stopped stroking the cat and turned to look at him. Lu Yixing lowered his head and continued to knit the hemp rope. His hands were slender and beautiful, but they had been worn out by life. "She is sisters with Yuan Tang's mother." Oh, so the prince of the Qin kingdom was called Yuan Tang. Gu Jiao understood. 2 sisters. One entered the palace as a concubine, and the other went to the enemy country to become a spy. The family that could cultivate these sisters was not simple. "Does the emperor know?" Gu Jiao asked. Lu Yixing shook his head. "I don't know if he knows." When the Lu family was convicted, Lu Yixing was too young. No one told him what happened to the Lu family. He watched as the Lu family was confiscated, beheaded, and exiled. In the end, only he, a child, and an old woman with a weak body were left. Anu was picked up along the way. Lu Yixing thought for a while and said, "He probably doesn't know, but it doesn't matter. I'm already a stray dog." "Why don't you leave?" Gu Jiao asked. Lu Yixing said self-mockingly, "Where should I go? The Qin kingdom? In the Zhao kingdom, I'm a stray dog. It's the same in the Qin kingdom." Half of the Zhao kingdom's blood flowed in his body. In the eyes of the Qin kingdom, he was not clean. Gu Jiao didn't try to persuade him again. Everyone had their own life and their own choices. Gu Jiao put down the white cat and got up to say goodbye. "I'm leaving." Lu Yixing looked at the confused white cat on the ground and asked her, "You're not taking the cat with you?" "You can take care of it," Gu Jiao said. Before he could say that he didn't have the money to take care of the cat, she took out a money bag and put it on the table. "It's for its food." After saying that, she stepped out of the courtyard. Lu Yixing didn't understand. He had been stroking the cat for 2 hours. He obviously liked it very much. Why did he have to take care of it? How could such a big clinic not be able to take care of a cat? Of course, he was just puzzled. He didn't ask Gu Jiao. He didn't even ask why Gu Jiao went to the palace to catch a cat. Why would he ask this? Some people didn't know each other well, but they could trust each other. The white cat had been stroked for the whole afternoon. Suddenly, no one stroked it. It was very lonely. It jumped on Lu Yixing's leg and asked for a pet. Lu Yixing didn't have time to stroke the cat. He ignored it and continued to make the hemp rope. "Do you know what will happen if you don't catch the cat in time?" It was Yuan Tang's voice. Lu Yixing looked back and saw Yuan Tang coming out of the central room. It seemed that he came in from the back door. Lu Yixing frowned. "You haven't left yet? I told you that you finally came to see me. I have to stay a little longer." Yuan Tang lay down on the rattan chair where he had been lying before. He played with the folding fan with one hand and put the other hand behind his head. He continued the previous topic. "If you don't catch the cat in time, the new top scorer will be hit by the cat. The cat will scare the top scorer, and the top scorer will also scare the cat. In the end, the frightened cat will knock down Princess Ning, who is passing by. Princess Ning is pregnant, and the child will most likely be lost. The new top scorer, Princess Ning, and the cat's owner. It's killing 3 birds with 1 stone. What a beautiful plan." Gu Jiao wanted to catch the cat, but Lu Yixing really just wanted to catch the cat. He looked at Yuan Tang in confusion. "How do you know?" Yuan Tang waved at the white cat. The white cat jumped down in disgust and reluctantly jumped on Yuan Tang's leg. Yuan Tang stroked it and said, "Because this is my cat. Someone tricked my cat with dried fish." As he spoke, he picked up the white cat and said coldly, "You stupid thing, you almost got me into trouble. Next time, don't blame me for stewing you into a pot of cat meat." Gu Jiao's dream was only related to Xiao Lulang. She didn't see the fate of the white cat and its owner. Meow, the white cat meowed guiltily. Yuan Tang poked the white cat's belly. The cat was guilty and obediently allowed him to poke it. "Compared to how I know, shouldn't you be more curious about how that girl knew? I guessed it based on the situation at the scene, but that girl seemed to have expected it." Lu Yixing thought of something and suddenly fell silent. Yuan Tang smiled mysteriously. Do you want me to investigate that girl? Lu Yixing said seriously. You'd better not. Yuan Tang asked. What's wrong? Are you angry? Lu Yixing looked down and twisted the rope. I have nothing to do with her. Why would I be angry? But if you investigate her, it will bring her trouble if you expose yourself. She helped you by accident. Yuan Tang thought for a moment and nodded. You're right. He looked at the sky. It's getting late. I really should go now. This is for you. Yuan Tang took out a few banknotes and placed them on the table. Lu Yixing said without hesitation. Take it away. Yuan Tang's teeth hurt. He sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at him in confusion. You take what the girl gives you, but you don't want what I give you? You'd rather not have enough to eat than accept my charity. You don't want to have anything to do with the Qin state? Are you really going to give it to me? Lu Yixing looked at him and asked. Yes. Yuan Tang opened his eyes wide and nodded. Lu Yixing said. Leave the cat. Take the rest. Yuan Tang. Yuan Tang took the banknotes away in the end. He knew that if Lu Yixing said he didn't want them, he would rather throw them away than take them. He left the white cat behind. After everyone left, Lu Yixing put the cat on the table. At the same time, his gaze fell on the money pouch. He hesitated for a moment, then picked up the money pouch. He opened it and found that there were not only a few ingots of silver inside, but also 3 hairpin flowers. Eastern Palace. Xiao Luleng met the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince looked at the youth in front of him in a daze. He didn't speak for a long time. He stood up and walked in front of Xiao Luleng. He walked a circle around him and looked at every strand of his hair from top to bottom. After a long time, he finally found his voice. You're the new top scorer? The examinee with the surname Xiao? Yes. Xiao Luleng looked straight ahead. Compared to the Crown Prince, he was much calmer. After all, it wasn't his first day in the capital. There were some things he had to face sooner or later. He had thought about it many times and had learned to be calm. The Crown Prince returned to the main seat in disbelief. He stared at the face that was so similar to the one in his memory. He opened his mouth and said, What's your name? Xiao Luleng. How can you have such a simple name? Xiao Luleng said, The elders in my family can't read. I was born on the 6th day of the new year, so I was called Luleng. The Crown Prince asked suspiciously. You said you were born on the 6th day of the new year? How many months? Xiao Luleng said, November. Cousin, it's New Year's Eve. The Crown Prince murmured. He pinched his fingers and looked at his crutches and legs. What's wrong with your legs? Xiao Luleng. I was injured a year or 2 ago. The Crown Prince. You can't get better? Xiao Luleng. I don't know. He was a cripple, so he wasn't perfect. The Crown Prince cleared his throat and said, What is your relationship with Marquis Xianping's manor? It doesn't matter. Xiao Luleng said calmly. He didn't look like his cousin, not at all. His cousin wasn't so cold. His cousin respected him and always looked happy when he saw him. His cousin's smile was warm, unlike this fellow who was cold from head to toe. This face was too similar. It was like his cousin had come alive. The only difference was that he was missing the mole under his right eye. The Crown Prince's face was pale. Eunuch Huang said in a small voice, Your Highness, are you okay? Why don't this servant take Xiao Zhuangyuan away first? You can summon him for questioning another day. The Crown Prince waved his hand, indicating for Eunuch Huang to leave. He looked at Xiao Luleng again and said seriously, Do you like to eat chestnuts? I like them. Xiao Luleng said. His cousin didn't like them. The Crown Prince said again, Do you eat spicy food? Xiao Luleng said, Yes. The Crown Prince made a hand signal to a palace servant. The palace servant brought over a bowl of spicy meat. Xiao Luleng looked at the meat that was covered in spicy food. He didn't even raise his eyelids. His jade-like slender fingers picked up a small piece and slowly ate it. The Crown Prince looked at him without blinking. He didn't want to miss any of his reactions. His cousin couldn't eat spicy food. The slightest bit of spicy food would make him spit out his tongue. This kind of meat would make his face turn red. However, Xiao Luleng ate it very easily. The Crown Prince didn't know why he let out a sigh of relief. Xiao Luleng left the imperial palace. Dusk was endless. The imperial city was shrouded in a warm orange glow. Lu Quan's carriage was parked near the imperial palace. Xiao Lulang walked over with his cane. He had just gotten into the carriage when he found Gu Jiao sitting in the carriage waiting for him. Gu Jiao leaned against the wall of the carriage. Her eyes were slightly closed like she was asleep. She was a little quiet and a little obedient. Xiao Liulang's gaze swept past her soft lips. His Adam's apple moved. He quickly moved his gaze away and got into the carriage. The carriage shook slightly. Gu Jiao woke up. She opened her eyes. When she saw him, her eyes lit up. "You're here." And Xiao Lulang sat down on the bench across from her. Lu Quan waved the horsewhip, and the carriage wheels started to turn. When the old chancellor first bought this carriage, he didn't consider that it would be used by a second person. Therefore, the space wasn't big. When the two sat in the carriage, their breaths quickly mixed together. It was really hot at the end of April. Xiao Lulang thought to himself, "Last night, I drank too much," he said. And Gu Jiao didn't mind. Xiao Lulang composed himself. "I won't do it again." And Gu Jiao looked at him with a puzzled expression. Xiao Lulang didn't look at her eyes. He just clenched his fists on his thighs and said seriously, "I won't drink too much again, and treat you like that." Oh. Gu Jiao was disappointed. Looking at the disappointment that flashed through her eyes, Xiao Lulang didn't know why but his head heated up. "I will when I'm sober." Gu Jiao. Xiao Lulang was dumbfounded after he said that. He swore that he didn't want to say that at first. He wanted to tell her that he wouldn't do anything rash and frivolous to her when he wasn't sober. However, when the words were about to come out of his mouth, why did it become another sentence? "I will when I'm sober." Is this something that a human should say? Too rash. I've really studied the books of sages in vain. Xiao Liulang's face suddenly flushed red. He wanted to find a hole to hide in. I didn't mean that. I didn't want to. Xiao Lulang found it hard to say those two words. Gu Jiao said on his behalf, "Didn't you want to kiss?" Xiao Lulang was embarrassed. And Gu Jiao thought for a moment and said to her fingers, "Then do you want to sleep with her?" And Xiao Liulang's body trembled. He shook his head violently. No, the latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896422826/1128192449. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 261. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are read for free. Novels with content that cannot be found on the internet are all available here. The kind that cannot be explained clearly and cannot be defended. Even during the imperial examinations, her brain did not cramp up like this. When the carriage reached home, Xiao Lulang got off the carriage as if he was escaping. Gu Jiao tilted her head and happily took out her little notebook. Flipping to the last page, she wrote down an important entry. The first day my husband wanted to sleep with me. The day to report to Hanlin Academy was the end of May. After the second and third place exams, Xiao Lulang basically did not need to go to the Imperial College. Even if he went, it would be to settle the transfer procedures. That's right, entering Hanlin Academy was to become an official on the surface, but in reality, it was still to study. Gu Jiao did not go to school in ancient times, but from what Xiao Lulang had told her, entering Hanlin Academy was equivalent to studying at public expense in her previous life. The top 3 places were already guaranteed to be a graduate student, and had the honor of becoming a civil servant of the country. The top 3 places were to take the exams again 3 years later. If one passed, they would become a civil servant of the country. If one failed, then sorry, they would have to go back to where they came from. If one was lucky, they could get the position of a county magistrate. If one was unlucky, they could only be a teacher in a provincial school or a prefectural school. With Du Ruhan's knowledge, it would not be a problem for him to pass the exams. However, Fenglin and Lin Qingye were in a bit of danger. Every day they would visit Xiao Lulang to ask for guidance. Xiao Lulang naturally did not spare any effort to teach them. Occasionally, when the old chancellor was cooking for the old lady, he would not give them any guidance. Fenglin whispered to Xiao Lulang, "Lulang, your granduncle is very impressive. I feel that he explained the question more thoroughly than you." This sentence actually had a very high evaluation of Xiao Lulang. In any case, Fenglin was someone who had studied at the Imperial College and had the best teaching resources in the entire Zhao country. However, Fenglin still thought that Xiao Lulang spoke the best. It wasn't that Fenglin had never met someone who was more knowledgeable than Xiao Lulang. Xiao Lulang was a genius, but he was only 18 years old. His life experience and knowledge foundation were there for all to see, but his teaching methods and perspective were the most beneficial to Fenglin. Fenglin had only seen one person more powerful than Xiao Lulang, and that was his son-in-law. Xiao Lulang thought to himself. That was the former chancellor of the Imperial College. How could he not be good at teaching? Fenglin sighed. With your granduncle's knowledge, it's a pity that he didn't take the imperial examinations. Xiao Lulang. Do you know about the 6 Yuan dynasty? Apart from the founding of Zhao country, he was the only person who had conquered all 3 major and minor states. However, at this time, the top scholar of Zhao country was wearing an apron and busying himself in front of the stove. The old lady wanted to eat brown sugar glutinous rice cake, sprinkled with white sesame. Gu Jiao went to the medical center early in the morning. Recently, the medical center's business was booming. On the one hand, it had a good reputation, so there were a lot of patients coming to see them. On the other hand, there were a lot of orders from the pharmaceutical factory, so they were very busy. Jiang Shi's body was almost healed, but he had been lying in the hospital bed for too long. Plus, he had some surgeries, so he needs to do some rehabilitation for a while. Gu Jiao taught Dr. Song the movements of rehabilitation, and asked Dr. Song to take him to do rehabilitation twice a day. After Gitch recovers, are we going to leave? Dr. Song and Jiang Shi were doing rehabilitation in Gu Jiao's courtyard. Little Jiang Li, who was watching from the side, suddenly asked. Jiang Shi's body slightly stiffened. Dr. Song smiled and said, Little Jiangli, are you reluctant to leave? Little Jiangli nodded seriously. She and her brother had been wandering for too long. They were sold from one place to another. They often didn't have enough to eat and warm clothes. They were also beaten. After coming to the medical center, they were the happiest days in the past few years. No one bullied her and her brother. She ate well every day and slept well. The people in the medical center were very good. I can work. Can I stay? Little Jiangli asked. Dr. Song was dumbfounded. Although he also liked the brother and sister very much, the medical center can't let them stay. The brother and sister were illegal residents. After being discharged from the hospital, they must be sent back to their residence. This was the law. The medical center was not qualified to let them stay. Jiang Shi said to little Jiangli, Don't talk about it, let's go out and play. Little Jiangli sighed. Okay. Little Jiangli went to the counter to help get the medicine. Gu Jiao saw dozens of patients in the morning. It was not easy to send away the last patient, but another distinguished guest came. Miss Gu. It was Imperial concubine Rui Wang, who she hadn't seen for a long time. Imperial concubine Rui Wang was 4 months pregnant. Her body was rounder, and her cheeks were chubby. Her complexion was ruddy, but her clothes were loose, so it didn't show that she was pregnant. Gu Jiao checked her pulse. The pulse is very stable. The fetus is very healthy. Imperial concubine Rui Wang didn't have much joy on her face. She said in a low mood, My sister-in-law's child is gone. Today she didn't come to Gu Jiao to check her pulse. She came to complain. There was no one in the house that she could talk to. She had to be more cautious in the palace. After thinking about it, Only Gu Jiao could make her let down all her guard. Gu Jiao asked, "You which sister-in-law? Princess Ning?" The young madam of the Du family was also her sister-in-law. Imperial concubine Rui Wang nodded sullenly. "Yes, it's Princess Ning. She didn't feel well last night, and didn't sleep well. In the morning, there was news in the palace that she had a miscarriage. It's a boy." Gu Jiao was not surprised. In that dream, Princess Ning didn't look good. Whether she was knocked down by a cat or not, the fetus would be miscarried. It was just a matter of whether it was sooner or later. Imperial concubine Rui Wang said sadly. "They all blame Princess Ning, saying that she shouldn't eat the chili. But what's wrong with eating chili? I also ate it. So many pregnant women ate it. This is the third time that she has a miscarriage. I don't know if she can get pregnant again in the future." Many people were staring at Princess Ning's belly. Princess Ning also knew that she had a lot of responsibilities. She carried too much pressure, which was not a good thing for a pregnant woman. Gu Jiao handed her a handkerchief. "You are pregnant. Don't be too sad." Well, Imperial concubine Rui Wang took the handkerchief. She cried and tried to calm down. "You are right. I can't be sad. I can't hurt the fetus." Imperial concubine Rui Wang felt better after crying in front of Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao originally thought that the white cat incident was that someone wanted to kill Princess Ning's fetus through Xiaolulang. It was killing 2 or 3 birds with one stone. But if Princess Ning's fetus was so bad that she could miscarry naturally, there was no need to do it. Therefore, no one knew whether someone wanted to get rid of Princess Ning's fetus, or Princess Ning wanted to frame someone else with a fetus that could not be saved at all. Obviously, Princess Ning's target was not Xiaolulang. Otherwise, there would have been trouble in the imperial garden just now. Gu Jiao didn't care about the internal strife in the palace. She only cared about the person who used the white cat to scare Xiaolulang. The other person seemed to know Xiaolulang very well, and knew that he was afraid of cats. Imperial concubine Rui Wang. Gu Jiao paused and asked her, "Is there anyone in Marquis Xuanping's mansion who is afraid of cats? For example, Marquis Xianping and his sons?" Well, Imperial concubine Rui Wang racked her brains to think. Marquis Xianping is definitely not afraid of cats. He has been on the battlefield. He is not afraid of cats and dogs. As for his sons, I don't know. Why do you ask this? Just asking, Gu Jiao said. Oh. Imperial concubine Rui Wang didn't suspect anything. She said, "Our Du family doesn't interact much with Marquis Xuanping's mansion, but that woman Wen Linlang, cough cough." Halfway through her words, she realized that she was speaking without thinking. She lowered her voice and corrected herself. The Crown Prince consort often goes to Marquis Xuanping's mansion. She and the young Marquis were engaged when they were young. They grew up as childhood sweethearts. She knows the people in the Marquis's mansion better. Gu Jiao said thoughtfully, "I heard that the Crown Prince consort does not have a high birth. Why was she able to form a marriage alliance with Marquis Xuanping's mansion?" Imperial concubine Rui Wang twisted her lips and said, "Isn't it because she saved the young Marquis when he was young? That was when I was 5. When Linling, cough, the Crown Prince consort was also 5 years old. The young Marquis at 2 years old fell into an ice hole. It was the Crown Prince consort who was lying on the ice, holding him with both hands to prevent him from sinking. Later on, the young Marquis was saved, but the Crown Prince consort's hands were ruined from soaking in the ice water. According to the Grand Physician, she had to cut off her hands to save her life. Princess Xinyang and Marquis Xianping probably both felt that they owed her, so they decided on this marriage. However, Marquis Xuanping's mansion found the best physician in Zhao Kingdom, and healed the Crown Prince consort's hands." "Is that so?" Gu Jiao murmured. Imperial concubine Rui Wang snorted. "She and the young Marquis had a good relationship when they were young. Do you know why she was able to take Zhuang Xianji as her master? That's right, you still don't know that she became the disciple of Grand Tutor Zhuang's 4th son, Zhuang Xian. He only accepted her because of Princess Xinyang. I admit that she has talent, but if it wasn't for Marquis Xuanping's mansion and Princess Xinyang's mansion, who would know who Wen Linlang is? But look at what she's done. Once the young Marquis died, she married the Crown Prince. Gu Jiao didn't object to a person pursuing their own happiness, but the prerequisite was that she didn't hurt others. As imperial concubine Rui Wang spoke, she went off topic and started to ridicule all kinds of crown prince consorts. Gu Jiao already knew what she wanted to know and had a rough idea. In the afternoon, she went to the Imperial College to pick up little Jing Kong from school. Little Jing Kong came out with Qin Chuyu and Su Kong ever since they caused trouble in the Eastern Palace and beat up Ming. The three of them hadn't gone to the Imperial Palace for a long time. But today, Qin Chuyu couldn't hold back anymore. He found a huge bird's nest on a big tree in the Imperial Palace and wanted to dig it out with his friends. Little Jing Kong ran to Gu Jiao and hugged Gu Jiao's leg. He rubbed his little head against her body. "Jiao Jiao, I missed you." Gu Jiao patted his little bald head. "Did you have fun today?" "Yes." Little Jing Kong looked up at Gu Jiao and said, "Jiao Jiao, can I go to the Imperial Palace to play?" Marquis Xianping didn't tell Gu Jiao about what happened last time. So Gu Jiao didn't know that the children caused trouble in the Imperial Palace. But even if she knew, Gu Jiao wouldn't give up eating for fear of choking. The emperor had lost his horse in front of Gu Jiao. As the emperor's son, Gu Jiao was well aware of Qin Chuyu's identity. Gu Jiao didn't answer immediately. Instead she asked, "Does your family agree?" Qin Chuyu nodded repeatedly. "Yes, yes. If you don't believe me, my sister-in-law will come to pick me up later. You can ask her." Speak of the devil. The crown princess's carriage stopped at the entrance of the Imperial College. A young eunuch walked down from the carriage and came to Qin Chuyu with a smile. "Seventh young master, I'm here to pick you up." Qin Chuyu asked immediately, "Is my sister-in-law here?" The young eunuch froze and said with a smile, "Young madam, something came up today and she can't come. She asked me to pick you up." Qin Chuyu was frustrated. "She said she would pick me up. How can she break her promise?" The young eunuch said immediately, "Young madam didn't break her promise. To be honest, young madam went to buy sesame cakes for you. Didn't you say that you liked the sesame cakes from last time?" Hearing that she was going to buy cakes for him, Qin Chuyu was relieved. "Okay, let's go." Qin Chuyu and little Jing Kong were about to get into the carriage, but Su Kanji was hesitant. Ever since his father took him home and beat him up, his father had told him not to go to the Imperial Palace to cause trouble again. He didn't dare to go. Little Jing Kong said, "Why don't we go to my house? There's an orchard near my house with bird nests." Su Kanji agreed. Qin Chuyu sighed helplessly. "If you insist, then okay," he said to the young eunuch. "I'll go back after playing for a while." The young eunuch said, "Oh, but what?" Qin Chuyu threw off his backpack and ran away with his two friends like a hurricane. He was just a little fatty, but she didn't know how he could run so fast. Gu Jiao rubbed her chin. It was a pity that she couldn't go to the Imperial Palace with them. Gu Jiao followed the kids to the orchard. With the Su family and the eunuchs in the Imperial Palace watching over them, Gu Jiao didn't have to worry about anything. They ran out of rice and spices at home. Gu Jiao planned to go to the market to buy some spices, but the market was out of spices. There was a spice shop on Chang'an Avenue, which wasn't far from here. Gu Jiao carried a small basket and went to Chang'an Avenue. Chang'an Avenue was more crowded than Xuanwu Avenue. There were many carriages and pedestrians. It was close to dinner time, and all the tea houses and restaurants were filled with the aroma of delicious food. Steamed buns. Fresh meat steamed buns. A hawker shouted on the side of the road. "Miss, do you want a steamed bun?" The hawker looked at Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao shook her head. No. She went into the spice shop and bought some spices. When she came out, she saw someone selling tanghulu. She bought one for the kids, the old lady Gu Yan and Xiaoshan. The small basket was heavy. She turned to go home. After a few steps, she saw a familiar figure from the corner of her eye. She knew the person because the person was wearing a white robe and a white bamboo hat with a veil. There were two female officials with her. She had seen one of them before. That was when the brothel collapsed. She was led to the basement of the brothel by Fei Shuang and bumped into the meeting between the Crown Princess and Marquis Xianping. At that time, the Crown Princess was wearing this robe, and she had that female official with her. It was really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it by chance without any effort. Miss. The Tonghulu hawker ran after her. Gu Jiao turned to look at him. What is it? I overcharged you just now. Here. The hawker awkwardly handed 5 copper coins to Gu Jiao. I'm really sorry. No matter, Gu Jiao said. With this distraction, the crown prince consort disappeared without a trace. Gu Jiao looked at the endless stream of people and narrowed her eyes thoughtfully. In a side room of a tea house, the crown princess saw Marquis Xianping, who was wearing a heavy purple robe. Marquis Xianping was sitting upright on a chair with an official's hat. Next to him was Chang Jing, who was holding a sword. All of you wait outside. The crown prince consort ordered the 2 accompanying female officials. The 2 of them complied and obediently waited outside the door. The crown princess entered the room and gave a junior's bow to Marquis Xianping. Uncle, Marquis Xianping said. Crown princess, this subject doesn't deserve this. The crown princess said. Uncle, don't say that. In this room, there is no crown princess, only Linlang. Linlang will always be your junior. Saluting you is something that should be done. Marquis Xianping sighed. Sit. Yes. The crown princess sat down across from Marquis Xianping. Chang Jing would not pour tea for people. He was an assassin. His hands were used to kill people and play with marbles. He stood there very arrogantly. The crown princess' eyelashes trembled. She personally reached out to pick up the teapot, but Marquis Xianping was 1 step ahead of her and poured her a cup of tea. The crown princess warmly said, Many thanks, uncle. Marquis Xianping put down the teapot. Why did you seek me out today? The crown princess lowered her eyes and smiled bitterly. Raising her eyes to look at him, she said, Uncle, is he really not Aheng? Marquis Xianping's expression froze. Didn't housekeeper Lu tell you? He is my illegitimate son in Song County. The crown princess said dejectedly, but he looks so similar to Aheng. Marquis Xianping picked up the teacup in front of him. I also hope that he is Aheng. I also asked him in person. The crown princess' eyes moved. What did he say? Marquis Xianping faintly said. What else could he say? He naturally said that he is not. As Marquis Xianping spoke, he pulled out a draft from his sleeve. This is his draft for the imperial exam. Take a look. It looks like Aheng's handwriting. The crown princess received the draft and carefully looked it over. Her face was filled with disappointment. It is completely different from Aheng's handwriting. There are times when I really hope that the New Year's Eve from 4 years ago was just a nightmare. When I opened my eyes, Aheng was still in the manor. Marquis Xianping tightened his grip on the teacup in his hand. The crown princess guiltily said, Apologies. I should not have brought up that sad matter. It's all in the past. Marquis Xianping said. The crown princess smiled bitterly and said, If Aheng can come back alive, princess will definitely be very happy. Speaking of these things now is meaningless. Marquis Xianping said. If there is nothing else, this official will be leaving first. The crown princess stood up and sent him out with her eyes. Chang Jing walked in front and opened the door for him. Just as he stepped over the threshold, the crown princess called out to him. Aheng is afraid of cats. Does uncle know? If uncle wants to know if he is Aheng or not. Marquis Xianping cut her off. Aheng is dead. Aheng no longer exists in this world. After Marquis Xianping left, the crown princess sat in the tea house for a little under an hour before going downstairs. Just after she left the room, the door to the room next door opened. Gu Jiao walked out of the room. Gu Jiao's eyes were very dangerous. The carriage stopped in the alley next to the tea house. The crown princess had come out in plain clothes, and did not bring many guards. She only brought an expert from the imperial palace as her driver. The carriage was just ahead. She walked over to the carriage. Just as she was about to get in, a small figure suddenly jumped down from the roof. Landing behind her, a gunny sack was placed over her head. Digression. Today's update period is over. Do you have a monthly pass? This book's newest chapter is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even more quickly. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that cannot be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642896/112816985. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 262. The newest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. Putting a gunny sack over someone was something she was familiar with. She had done it with money last time, so it was about the same this time. The Crown Prince Consort didn't even have time to shout before she was carried away with a whoosh. The 2 female officials had clearly been following behind the Crown Prince Consort, but the Crown Prince Consort had disappeared in the blink of an eye. It was true that the Crown Prince Consort had turned into the alley before the 2 of them, but she shouldn't have disappeared in the blink of an eye, right? Was it this fast? The 2 quickly walked in front of the carriage and lifted the curtain, only to see that the carriage was empty. One of them asked the imperial expert, "Have you seen the Crown Prince Consort?" The imperial expert said strangely, "Isn't the Crown Prince Consort with you?" The female official said, "The Crown Prince Consort just came over. Did you not see her?" The imperial expert said, "When did the Crown Prince Consort come over?" The female official said urgently, "She clearly came over." The imperial expert snorted, "Would I not know if she came over?" "You. Forget it, Sister Ming." The other female official with the surname Qing shook her head. "Don't argue. Let's hurry and find the Crown Prince Consort. Maybe she is nearby and went to see someone." Female official Ming muttered, "How could the Crown Prince Consort leave us behind to go see someone alone?" Female official Qing said, "Let's search first. Split up and search." The 3 split up to search, but this was a straight alley without any forks. There were many carriages parked here. They searched the carriages one by one, but there was no trace of the Crown Prince Consort. "Did you really see the Crown Prince Consort walk into the alley?" the imperial expert asked. Female official Ming said anxiously, "The Crown Prince Consort was in front of us. She turned a corner. If she didn't enter the alley, where did she go?" The imperial expert raised his head in suspicion and looked at the roofs on the 2 sides. Had she been kidnapped? The curtain of night fell. The last sliver of orange light of the sunset stubbornly floated on the cornices of the dugong, reflecting a dazzling light. Gu Jiao tiptoed, her body as light as a swallow. Carrying a large sack, she flew down from the eaves and entered the orchard near Jadewater Alley through the back door. The orchard was half open, and the children in the nearby alleys loved to go in to play. If they picked the fruits, they had to buy them by the caddy, which was cheaper than the ones on the market. At the back of the orchard, there was a tool shed that had been converted from a horse shed. It had been in disrepair for a long time, and was leaking in and out of use. Gu Jiao pushed open the door, and casually threw the sack inside. He did not show any mercy to the woman. The crown princess was jolted all the way, and her intestines almost broke from the jolting. When she suddenly fell to the ground, she cried out in pain. "Ah, who are you?" Gu Jiao didn't want to talk nonsense with her. She took the sack off her head. After being tossed all the way in the sack, her hair bun had come loose and her pearl hairpin had fallen off. She was in a sorry state. She subconsciously raised her hand to block the light in front of her eyes. When she realized that it wasn't too glaring, she looked at the robber standing in front of her. It was actually a woman wearing a gaudy peacock plume mask. A trace of indescribable astonishment flashed across her eyes. "Who exactly are you? What do you want to do?" Gu Jiao casually walked in front of her and looked down at her. She reached out and grabbed the front of her clothes, lifting her up. Following that, she gave her a big slap and directly threw her against the wall. Using a cat to scare her husband? Haha. The crown princess had never been treated like this before. Although her maternal family was not worth mentioning compared to the Du family and Duke Luo's residence, it was still a scholarly family. The young ladies in her family were all pampered and raised. When she became the little Marquis's fiancée, she was the moon surrounded by the stars, and everyone tried to curry favor with her. The biggest grievance was that she was ignored by other countries when she went to the kingdom of Liang, but that wasn't targeted at her. She was put in a sack, lifted up like a little chick, and even given a big slap. This was simply inconceivable, alright? You. She fell to the ground and looked coldly at Gu Jiao, trying to use her powerful aura as the crown princess to intimidate the other party. However, sorry. Gu Jiao grabbed her. Duang. 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 Again and again, like driving a stake, she wished she could plant her into the ground. You're crazy. I'm Crown Prince. Ash, The crown princess was beaten until she broke down and couldn't even speak properly. Gu Jiao's little fists beat her from sunset until the sky turned dark, and successfully beat her into a pig's head. Gu Jiao blew on her little fists. It's really not easy for me. I'm really tired. The crown princess with a crooked nose and slanted mouth. Who exactly was the one who wasn't easy? Suddenly, footsteps were heard outside the room. Immediately after, the half-closed door was kicked open, and the imperial court expert beside the crown princess rushed in. He glanced at the crown princess, who was in a sorry state, and the veins on his forehead popped. Stop. Let go of the crown princess. Gu Jiao clapped her hands. Oh. The imperial court expert didn't care if the other party was a little girl. He rushed over and started fighting with Gu Jiao. Every move he made was a killing move, and the two were instantly entangled in a fight. The imperial court expert would quickly realize that stopping Gu Jiao was his biggest mistake tonight. Actually, Gu Jiao was almost done with the beating, and was about to leave. If the imperial court expert didn't attack Gu Jiao, he could immediately take the crown princess away. Unfortunately, the two started fighting. As expected of an imperial court expert, Gu Jiao found it difficult to ward off his attacks at the beginning. However, after a few dozen moves, Gu Jiao gradually entered a good state and slowly reached a tie with him. After a while, she seemed to be gaining the upper hand. From the looks of it, the imperial court expert probably couldn't restrain this girl. Whether or not he could restrain her, Gu Jiao didn't want to beat the crown princess anymore. However, the crown princess didn't think so. She thought that if she didn't leave now, she would definitely be beaten later. Therefore, she used all her strength to escape while the imperial court expert was holding off Gu Jiao. She was quite lucky. She ran into Qin Chuyu, who was playing in the orchard, even though she was escaping in a panic. Qin Chuyu, little Jing Kong, and Su Dangsong shook off the young eunuch and the Su family's servants and ran to a large jujube tree. Little Jing Kong loved to eat jujubes from this tree. Unfortunately, there weren't any jujubes right now. However, there was a large bird's nest. I'll climb up first, Su Dangsong said. He was the youngest son of the Minister of War, and had practiced martial arts since he was a child. He wasn't too spoiled and climbed up the tree quickly. Little Jing Kong also quickly climbed up the tree. Only Qin Chuyu was left. Qin Chuyu was chubby and spoiled. He couldn't even climb up a stool, let alone a tree. Like this. Little Jing Kong anxiously showed him how to climb up the tree. Wrap your arms around it and cross your legs. Move your arms first, then move your legs. Lift your butt and you'll be up. Qin Chuyu tried a few times and really climbed up a little. At this moment, the crown princess appeared. She was usually a very calm person, but people's fear of the unknown could always overwhelm their rationality. Gu Jiao didn't want anything and just kept beating her up. She was so terrified that she didn't even care about her manners and status. When she saw Qin Chuyu, she saw him as her savior and suddenly pounced on him. Little Qin Chuyu finally climbed a few feet. When he turned his head, he saw a pig's face. He was so scared that he screamed, "Ghost!" Then he kicked his opponent's face. The crown princess's nose, which was intact, was crooked by Qin Chuyu's kick. Her nose was bleeding. Qin Chuyu was even more scared. I can't do it. I'm going to fall down. Qin Chuyu's limbs turned to jelly, and he fell to the ground. Little Jing Kong and Su Kanji saw this and hurriedly climbed down to help him. The crown princess held back the pain and covered her bleeding nose. Little Chi, it's me. I'm the royal sister-in-law. Where are your servants and carriage? Leave with the royal sister-in-law. She was so excited that she even forgot to hide her and Qin Chuyu's royal identity. Little Jing Kong and Su Kanji didn't understand what she was talking about. Don't come over. Qin Chuyu was so scared by the crown princess's ghost-like appearance that he kept stepping back. Little Jing Kong was a smart kid. With his rich life experience, he instantly came to a conclusion. Brother Little Chi, brother Kanji, she's a prostitute. The prostitute used this trick to kidnap him and Ming, Er's brother. She pretended to know them and said that they were their children. No one would suspect her even if she took them away. Su Kanji thought Little Jing Kong was right. Plus, this wasn't the royal sister-in-law in Qin Chuyu's memory. Therefore, the three of them agreed that she was a prostitute who kidnapped children. They couldn't tolerate a prostitute. The three little kids had a strong sense of justice. They found a stick and gave the man a good beating. Therefore, after being beaten up by Gu Jiao, the crown princess was beaten up by the 3B** Chis of the Imperial College with sticks. Qin Chuyu was the leader. Who could reason with them? On the other side, Marquis Xianping didn't know about the crown princess's tragic experience. He got on the carriage to return home. The coachman was Chang Jing. Halfway through the journey, he suddenly asked Chang Jing to stop the carriage. Chang Jing, he said. Yes. Chang Jing turned around and lifted the curtain to look at him. There was no light in the carriage, so it was a little dim. However, there were candlelight and moonlight on the street. The moonlight shone through the gaps in the curtains and fell on Marquis Xianping's handsome face that had been sculpted by time. Chang Jing couldn't see what was good about this person. Marquis Xianping sighed. Is there anything you're afraid of? Chang Jing thought about it seriously and shook her head. No. Marquis Xianping looked at her suspiciously. Nothing? Chang Jing lowered her head. Cockroaches. Marquis Xianping. You're the #1 assassin of the Dark Knight sect. You're afraid of a few cockroaches? Dirty, Chang Jing explained, feeling wronged. When Chang Jing was very young, she ate a few cockroaches in her food. That was someone who deliberately disgusted her. In the end, she was really disgusted. Ever since then, she would remember that she ate cockroaches. Her scalp would feel numb. Marquis Xianping raised his eyebrows and said with some pride, At least Ahing is afraid of cats. She's better than you. The corner of Chang Jing's mouth twitched. What sense of existence are you looking for in this? Speaking of which, Marquis Xianping really didn't expect Ahing to be afraid of cats. Thinking carefully, he really wasn't a good father. He didn't even know about his son's taboos. Marquis Xianping was conflicted for a moment. Making up his mind, he said, Don't go back to the manor first. Go to Baishui Alley. Also find me a cat. Chang Jing quickly found a stray cat on the side of the road. Marquis Xianping picked up the pitiful little stray cat and frowned. Could this thing test whether or not he was Ahing? Gu Jiao and Little Jing Kong still hadn't returned home when it was dark. Xiao Luling decided to go out and look for them. Just as he crossed the threshold of the front yard, he saw a familiar carriage stopped at the door. Marquis Xianping sat outside the carriage, holding the stray cat in his hand with disdain. He had made up his mind to use this cat to test Xiao Luling. However, just as Xiao Luling walked out of the door, he instinctively stuffed the cat into Chang Jing's arms and used his broad body to block Chang Jing. His movements were too fast. Xiao Luling didn't see the cat, and only felt that his actions were strange. Xiao Luling ignored him and walked out of the alley expressionlessly. Chang Jing looked at the stray cat that was suddenly stuffed into her arms and asked, You're not going to test him? Marquis Xianping sighed. I'm not going to test him. At least he didn't need to test him like this. Why? Chang Jing didn't understand. Marquis Xianping sighed. I'm afraid that he really is Aheng. Chang Jing looked at the stray cat in her arms and then looked at Marquis Xianping. If it's Aheng, isn't it good? Marquis Xianping bitterly said, Not good. If it was him, he would be frightened by this cat. Understanding complex emotions was a killer's weakness. Just like how Gu Jiao couldn't understand Yao Shi's choices in love, Chongjing also couldn't understand Marquis Shuangping's caution in front of Xiao Lulang. Chongjing asked, "Then do you still want this cat?" Marquis Xianping faintly said, "No. Also get rid of all the stray cats in the manor." The two female officials finally found the crown princess who had been mistaken for a prostitute in the orchard. The crown princess could no longer be described as unrecognizable. The female officials saw that Qin Chuyu was the one leading the beating and didn't know what to do. Giving the order to arrest was impossible. The crown princess was the emperor's daughter-in-law, but Qin Chuyu was the emperor and empress's son. Also, being beaten like a prostitute was too shameful. If this got out, would the crown princess still have any face? In the end, the two female officials took the crown princess away with the excuse of going to the authorities. No, dragged her away. After Qin Chuyu returned to the palace, he bragged to his father emperor about how he had chased away a prostitute and received great praise from the emperor. The Zhuang Manor. The physician removed the stitches for Royal Prince and changed the medicine for the last time. He reminded him to stay in bed and rest more before taking his medicine box and bidding farewell. The servants sent the physician out of the manor. Grand Tutor Zhuang gave Wu Yang a look. Wu Yang understood and walked out of the room, closing the two doors from the outside. Royal Prince leaned against the head of the bed and pulled the blanket over his injured leg. He calmly said, "It's late. Grandfather, you should rest early." Grand Tutor Zhuang's eyes were slightly cold. "Marquis Xianping has gone too far. I will avenge you sooner or later." Royal Prince looked down and sneered. "Easier said than done? He is the emperor's brother-in-law and also the emperor's elder brother-in-law. He also has military power and can command hundreds of people. Who can do anything to him?" Grand Tutor Zhuang's eyes became even colder. If the Empress Dowager was still in the imperial court, Marquis Xianping wouldn't have the chance to stir up trouble. Royal Prince didn't refute the mention of Empress Dowager Zhuang. She was indeed a strategist and controlled the affairs of two dynasties. When Marquis Xianping was still playing in the mud, she was already the most favored empress. However, no matter how powerful a person was, there would be times when the horse stumbled. How did she get leprosy? Grand Tutor Zhuang coldly said, "You've misjudged Xiao Lulang. I'm afraid that he already recognized the Empress Dowager. From the beginning, his goal of getting close to the Empress Dowager wasn't simple. It's a pity that we were all kept in the dark. In order for him to bring the Empress Dowager to the capital, he persuaded the emperor to reopen the Imperial College. Fortunately, the Imperial College hasn't fallen into the emperor's hands. There is still room for redemption. However, no matter what, the Empress Dowager can't remain in their hands." This time he didn't refute his grandfather's words. However, he seemed to have thought of something and was silent for a moment. Then he asked, "Grandfather, what do you plan to do?" Grand Tutor Zhuang flicked his wide sleeves. "Openly visit the Empress Dowager and acknowledge her." In Baishui Alley, the matriarch had just finished playing a game of cards. She pushed the card table. "That's all for today. I'm not playing anymore." The neighbors reluctantly returned to their homes. That's right, although they lost money, they still had a good time playing. This was mainly due to the matriarch's strategy of winning money. The matriarch wouldn't play cards with the same table every day, and she wouldn't always take advantage of one person. For example, Auntie Zhao lost yesterday, so she let her win a little today. Everyone felt that it was normal to win and lose. However, if they carefully calculated the accounts, they lost their own money and won their companion's money. No one had ever won money from the matriarch. The matriarch stretched and went next door to see Gu Yan and Gu Xiaoshan. Gu Yan lazily lay on the bed and fell asleep. Gu Xiaoshan sat on a small stool and obediently did woodwork. The matriarch was very satisfied. Xiaoshan, this child, was very sensible. She didn't have high expectations for Gu Yan. It was good that he was alive. Madame Yao was doing embroidery. Lu Lang and the other two were doing something outside. It was already dark, but they still hadn't returned. The matriarch was hungry, so she went to the kitchen to find food. Nanny Fong went to the embroidery building to get clothes, and the old chancellor cooked at night. The old chancellor stir-fried a few home-cooked dishes, stewed a pot of asparagus chicken soup, and fried a few brown sugar glutinous rice cakes. Next was the food that was specially made for little Jing Kong: lily egg soup, tofu vegetarian meatballs, and stir-fried vegetable shrimp. Have the children come back? The old chancellor asked. His tone was familiar, and his address was natural. It was exactly the same as when Uncle Zhao and Aunt Zhao talked about their children. Not yet. The matriarch began to look for food. Here. The old chancellor seemed to have known that she would be hungry, so he took out a small plate of brown sugar glutinous rice cakes. This plate of glutinous rice cakes was sprinkled with white sesame seeds. The children didn't like to eat brown sugar glutinous rice cakes sprinkled with white sesame seeds. The matriarch didn't feel that there was anything wrong. She held the plate, sat down on a small stool, and slurped the glutinous rice cakes. One was busy in front of the stove, and the other was eating behind it. The oil in the pot sizzled, and the room was filled with the smell of crispy oil and scallion. Knock, knock, knock. There was a knock on the door outside. Who is it? Yaoshi put down her embroidery and walked out. The old chancellor quickly walked out of the kitchen and said to the naked Yaoshi, "Let me do it, let me do it." "Ah, okay." Yaoshi obediently returned to the room. The courtyard door was actually half closed, so it shouldn't be a neighbor. Otherwise, they would have directly pushed the door open and entered. "Who is it?" he asked as he opened the wooden door. He immediately saw Grand Tutor Zhuang at the door, and his brows twitched. He closed the door and smeared some wall dust on his face before opening the door again. He squeezed out a strange voice and asked, "Who is it? What's the matter?" Grand Tutor Zhuang sized him up strangely. It was clear that he was baffled by his actions of opening and closing the door. Then he saw that his face was covered in dirt and his clothes were plain. He instantly treated him as a servant in the courtyard, and didn't look at the old chancellor directly. Otherwise, if he looked at him a few more times, he would still be able to recognize him. Grand Tutor Zhuang said indifferently, "Call your matriarch out, I have something to talk to her about." The old chancellor had calculated everything, but he didn't expect that Grand Tutor Zhuang would come personally, and that Empress Dowager Zhuang wouldn't be able to recognize the Zhuang family. One had to know that before Empress Dowager Zhuang lost her memory, the junior she doted on the most was Royal Princein. When Royal Princein went to Qin Empire as a hostage, Empress Dowager Zhuang was so angry that she couldn't eat for a few days and nights. She even fell sick. Now that Lulang had snatched away the position of the new top scholar that should have belonged to Royal Princein, if her memory was awakened by the Zhuang family, Lulang would be in trouble. The old chancellor puffed out his chest and said, "What matriarch? Who are you? Have you found the wrong person? Go. If you don't go, I will report it to the officials. A dog servant dares to block my master's path. Move aside." The guard beside Grand Tutor Zhuang took a big stride forward and pushed the old chancellor away mercilessly. The old chancellor staggered and almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, a hand reached over and supported him in time. He turned his head and saw that it was over. The demon empress who brought disaster to the country had come out. The matriarch didn't even look at the guard. Her cold gaze landed on Grand Tutor Zhuang's face. She was dressed in plain clothes and didn't have any extra pearl ornaments on her head. However, her noble aura seemed to burst out from her bones. Even the old chancellor who was supported by her couldn't help but shiver. This was the first time he was terrified after being with her for so long. It was even fiercer than when she came to rob his private stash with a knife. Digression, just 3 more votes to break the 1,000 mark. Look at my longing eyes. Continue reading today. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels to read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896422826/1127888824. HTML Genius remembers this website's address in a second. www.zhhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com Chapter 263. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. The matriarch felt that in this situation, she should say kneel. Although she didn't understand what was going on, before she could speak, the guard had already knelt down. The matriarch was speechless. Grand Tutor Zhuang also walked forward with an excited expression and cupped his hands in greeting. "Who are you?" the matriarch asked. "This official." Grand Tutor Zhuang was about to say something when he remembered that she didn't remember the past, and changed his words. "I am your older brother. You are Zhuang Jince, I am Zhuang Boyang. Do you still remember me?" "Older brother?" The matriarch looked at him suspiciously. "Yes." Grand Tutor Zhuang said excitedly. "Do you remember now?" The matriarch didn't answer him. Instead, she looked at the old chancellor beside her and asked, "Did you have someone push him?" "This servant is so unreasonable, he actually shut me out." Grand Tutor Zhuang glanced at the old man beside the matriarch with disgust. He didn't know why, but he was especially annoyed. When he saw him standing with his younger sister, he had the urge to rush up and beat him up. The matriarch looked at him and said impatiently, "What did you just say?" Grand Tutor Zhuang was stunned by her unfriendly tone. "I said he shut me out?" The matriarch said, "The sentence before that." Grand Tutor Zhuang thought for a moment. "This servant is so unreasonable." The matriarch nodded, walked to the door, and hooked her finger at Grand Tutor Zhuang. Grand Tutor Zhuang walked over. "Younger sister." The matriarch patted his shoulder. "Turn around and face outside." Grand Tutor Zhuang didn't understand, but he still turned around. The next second he felt a pain in his butt. The matriarch had kicked him out. He was caught off guard and tripped over the threshold, falling to the ground. Without waiting for him to react, old mistress slammed the courtyard door shut with a bang. "Servant? Servant your ass. Who are you to bully my man?" Grand Tutor Zhuang was shut out. He knew that he wouldn't be able to see Empress Dowager Zhuang again today. He secretly gritted his teeth and left unwillingly. On the way back, he was very puzzled. Why did Empress Dowager Zhuang treat him like this? Did he not know him and treated him as a bad guy? Or was he trying to get revenge for that old man? Ridiculous. When did Empress Dowager Zhuang care so much for a servant? She regarded human lives as worthless. She could even send a princess of an empire to be married off casually. How could she stand up for a servant? Actually, not only was Grand Tutor Zhuang puzzled, the old chancellor was also confused. He would believe it if Zhuang Jince took a knife and cut him into pieces, but he didn't dare to believe that Zhuang Jince would stand up for him. But he didn't believe that it had happened. He wasn't a fool, and he wouldn't deceive himself by thinking, "Oh, she's not doing this for me. She might be wary of strangers." You're already half a foot in the grave. Can you have some shame? The old chancellor touched the bridge of his nose and said embarrassedly, "That." He wanted to say thank you, but he couldn't. Both master and disciple had the same temperament. When they were fooling people, they would talk loudly without being stuck, but when it came to the crucial moment to set off the atmosphere, they would be tongue-tied. The old lady didn't have his kind of awkwardness at all. She only did something that couldn't be any more normal. She walked towards the kitchen carelessly. The glutinous rice cake wasn't finished yet, and it would get cold if she didn't eat it. The old chancellor looked at her anxious back view and guessed that she was going to find food. Was this foodie still that all-powerful demon empress who brought disaster to the country? For the first time, the old chancellor had doubts about his own cognition. Could it be that Zhuang Jince's nature wasn't as bad as what he saw? Or perhaps he had misunderstood Zhuang Jince in the past. Everything else could be cleared up, but the matter of her using the former emperor's dragon body to make a deal definitely couldn't be cleared up. Other empresses were racking their brains to seize the emperor's favor, but she took the green token to her own palace of earthly tranquility. If one wanted to get the token, they would have to pay first, and the highest bidder would sleep. She even set up a reward. If one was pregnant with a dragon seed, they would be rewarded with 1,000 taels of silver. If one was born safely, they would be rewarded with 2,000 taels of silver. If one gave birth to a prince, they would be able to serve the former emperor for free once. How much silver did she earn? She couldn't even count it. However, what was even more infuriating was that the former emperor had been kept in the dark, and was even complacent that he had such a virtuous empress who would always find beauties for him. That was how Zhuang Jin's title of virtuous empress came about. When the former emperor found out the truth, it was already too late. The power of the imperial court had already fallen into the hands of Zhuang Jins and the Zhuang family. The former emperor died with hatred. Zhuang Jins dethroned the crown prince and supported the current emperor to become the emperor. She then began her 20 years of ruling from behind the curtain. Zhuang Jins, oh Zhuang Jins, what kind of person are you? If one day you remember who you are, will you return to the original Zhuang Jins or continue to be the grandaunt of Lulang and Jiao? Xiao Lulang went to the orchard to pick up Gu Jiao and little Jing Kong, who were on their way back. Both the adult and the child were very refreshed, as though they had done something amazing. Little Jing Kong was jumping up and down happily. He was happy to hit a beggar. He was happy to meet Jiao. Today was another day for him to be arrogant and brave. The two adults and one child returned home. Gu Jiao went to fetch water for little Jing Kong to wash his hands. The old chancellor called for dinner and started to set the table. Gu Xiaoshan shook Gu Yan awake. Time to eat. Gu Yan rubbed his sleepy eyes and turned over lazily. I'm not eating, I want to sleep. Gu Xiaoshan said. Eat before you sleep. No. Gu Yan covered his head with the blanket. Suddenly, a pair of small icy hands reached in and held Gu Yan's face. Gu Yan was jolted awake by the cold. He lifted the blanket and sat up. Little monk, are you itching for a beating? Little Jing Kong ran to the door and made a face at him. Ha ha ha. You wait. Gu Yan quickly got out of bed. Little Jing Kong waved his small arms to complain. Jiao. Brother Yan wants to hit me. Gu Yan grabbed the feather duster. You're not allowed to complain blindly. You're the one who attacked me sneakily. The two little masters quarreled, and the chickens and dogs in the courtyard also began to quarrel. It was a mess every night. The old chancellor thought to himself that if someone dared to make a ruckus in front of Empress Dowager Zhuang in the past, that person would have been dragged out to the 10 feet of red. Unlike now, she was eating melon seeds while watching the bustling scene. After dinner, the old chancellor saw that there was no one around, so he asked the old lady a question. Aren't you afraid that person is really your brother? The old lady gave him a despising look. How is that possible? Isn't Lulang the only one left in my family? Yes. The old chancellor didn't dare to deny, for fear that he would accidentally say something wrong. But looking at her heartless look, he suddenly couldn't bear it. He asked, what if you still have a family with power and influence? Will you want to go back? Something is wrong with you. The old lady looked at him suspiciously. She put the melon seeds on the stove and picked up a kitchen knife. Tell me honestly, are you hiding money from me again? The old chancellor was speechless. The old chancellor felt that it was necessary to mention to Xiao Lulang about Grand Tutor Zhuang's visit. At night, after everyone fell asleep, Xiao Lulang was called to the next room by the old chancellor. After telling him about Grand Tutor Zhuang, Xiao Lulang wasn't surprised at all. The old chancellor was puzzled. You already knew that the Zhuang family knew? Xiao Lulang didn't hide. When I was in the countryside, Princeton came to my house. That was so early. The old chancellor was stunned. He knew that royal Princeton had gone to a small county. That was before the provincial examination. It had been almost a year since then. The old chancellor muttered. It seems like the reopening of the directorate is related to the Zhuang family. Even if you didn't become the top scorer, the Zhuang family would let you come to the directorate. They know your situation very well and knew that you would bring your family along. Zhuang Jins would then be able to enter the capital openly. The old chancellor suddenly called the old lady by her full name. Xiao Lulang was slightly stunned and glanced at the old chancellor. However, the old chancellor didn't notice anything wrong, so Xiao Lulang didn't say anything. The old chancellor was immersed in his own thoughts and continued. Now that you are the top scorer and Marquis Xianping openly approached you, The Zhuang family must think that you have sided with His Majesty and Marquis Xianping's residents, and want to be their enemy. Therefore, they can't put Zhuang Jin's in your hands. Look, Grand Tutor Zhuang was rejected today, but he won't let it go. The old chancellor was right. Grand Tutor Zhuang didn't give up on bringing Empress Dowager Zhuang back. Since the soft approach didn't work, then he would use the hard approach. It was naturally impossible to make a move on Empress Dowager Zhuang, not to mention whether it was a capital offense or not. Empress Dowager Zhuang was a noble person. If something went wrong, they couldn't bear the responsibility. Thus, Grand Tutor Zhuang glanced at the person beside Empress Dowager Zhuang. Xiao Lulang was too cautious. It was said that the girl had some skills, but it wasn't easy to succeed. It was said that the girl's mother also lived there. Unfortunately, she didn't go out at all, so it wasn't easy to succeed. Then, there were only 3 children studying in the directorate, and Qinghe Academy left. The younger one always mingled with the son of the Minister of War and the 7th Prince. It was easy to alert the enemy. Finally, after careful consideration, Grand Tutor Zhuang locked onto one person. Gu Xiaoshan. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896428266/112786066. HTML Genius remembered this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 264. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. Gu Yan kicked off his blanket at night and coughed a little in the morning. Yao Shi was worried about him, so she did not let him go to school. Naturally, she did not go to Master Lu and Nan Xiang's place to learn after school. Gu Xiaoshan still went. Lu Quan sent him there. In the past few months, Master Lu basically did not teach Gu Xiaoshan too many technical things. He just let Gu Xiaoshan whittle the wood over and over again. Gu Xiaoshan did not show any impatience, nor did he ask when he would stop whittling wood. Master Lu felt that this child was very calm. Gu Xiaoshan. It's mainly because studying is too boring. In comparison, cutting wood is simple and easy. I don't even need to use my brain. After cutting wood, Gu Xiaoshan went to eat at his master and master's house as usual. The food was usually cooked by Nan Xiang. Nan Xiang's cooking was not very good. She even disliked eating it. Gu Xiaoshan, however, did not seem to dislike it at all. Whatever Nan Xiang cooked, he would eat it. He did not waste a single mouthful of soup. Because of this, Nan Xiang also felt that Gu Xiaoshan was very good. Gu Xiaoshan. It's mainly because brother-in-law's cooking is too bad. After tasting brother-in-law's cooking, master's wife's cooking is already at the level of a chef. After finishing today's lesson, Gu Xiaoshan said goodbye to his master and master's wife. He sat on the carriage to go home. At this time, the sky was already dark. It was not like the previous days where there would be a sunset glow. Today, the sky was gray, as if there was a huge black curtain pressing down. It's going to rain. Lu Quan said. Gu Xiaoshan did not like sitting in the carriage. He liked sitting outside. Hearing Lu Quan's words, he lifted the curtain and sat out. He said to Lu Quan, Master said that if it rains he won't come. The mountain roads are hard to travel on. He's afraid of accidents. Lu Quan could hear his regret. He smiled and comforted him. It's only going to rain for a day or 2. It's not a big deal. You can come again soon. Gu Xiaoshan nodded. The two of them chatted for a while. The air was stuffy, and it seemed like it was going to rain heavily. Gu Xiaoshan was thinking about how many days it would take for them to come over. Suddenly, she heard Lu Quan cry out. Lu Quan pulled on the reins and stopped the carriage. What happened? Gu Xiaoshan asked as she looked ahead. She saw a person lying down on the mountain road in front of the carriage. The person was hugging his knees and looked like he was in great pain. That person screamed, my leg was broken by you guys broken. This. Lu Quan wanted to go down to take a look, but Gu Xiaoshan stopped him. This was a scammer. Back when he was a bully in the countryside, Gu Xiaoshan had seen a lot of such tricks. They could fool others, but not him. Seeing that Gu Xiaoshan and Gu Yuxing did not respond, the man's eyes flashed and he continued to wail. My leg. Lu Quan whispered. It's not good for him to just lie there. Gu Xiaoshan shouted, run him over. That person looked at Gu Xiaoshan and saw Gu Xiaoshan take the whip from Lu Quan's hand and whip the horse. The horse was in pain and neighed twice as it galloped forward. That person saw that the situation was not good and did not care about the scam anymore. He quickly got up from the ground and ran away. Lu Quan was stunned. How could it be like this? The matter was far from over. That person saw that the scam was not working. His eyes turned cold, and he actually used his qinggong to fly towards the carriage. He directly jumped over the roof of the carriage and pulled Gu Xiaoshan down from the carriage. Xiaoshan. Lu Quan was shocked and quickly reached out to pull on the reins. However, that person seemed to have expected Lu Quan to do so. Before he got down from the carriage, he slapped the horse with his hand. This slap was infused with internal energy, and it hurt the horse badly. No matter how Lu Quan pulled on the reins, it could not stop. After Gu Xiaoshan was held hostage by that person, he was very unhappy and pulled away the other person's hand that was grabbing his collar. What are you doing? Two big men pulling and pulling each other. What a scandal. Don't you have any shame? The corner of that person's mouth twitched. You're a big man? Have you grown hair? Gu Xiaoshan said unhappily. Do you want to see? That person said. If you listen to me, I'll let you suffer less. Gu Xiaoshan retorted. Why don't you listen to me and let you suffer less? That person. Did he mean it the way he understood it? How old was this kid? How could he speak like a hooligan? Also, how could he tell that he was the one below? Cough. Forget it. This was an important hostage. Before the Empress Dowager returned to the Zhuang family, the hostage had to be unharmed. That person decided to endure it. He grabbed Gu Xiaoshan's shoulder and was about to take Gu Xiaoshan away. Unexpectedly, Gu Xiaoshan wrapped one arm around him and broke free from his grasp. Gu Xiaoshan broke into a run. Want to run? It's not that easy. That person snorted coldly and lightly jumped up to chase after him. However, just as he was about to use his qinggong and leap up, a silver needle suddenly flew from behind him and pierced through his thigh with a whoosh. He groaned and fell from the air. He looked at his thigh in disbelief, and then looked at the silver needle stuck in the ground. His expression changed greatly. Tanghua needle? Someone from the Tang sect? How could someone from the Tang sect appear in the Zhao country? And they were secretly protecting that kid? Wasn't he just a rash kid from the countryside? How could he be related to the Tang sect, which was not part of the 6 countries? That person didn't dare to chase after Gu Xiaoshan anymore. He gritted his teeth and left. After a while, Master Lu and Nan Xiang slowly walked out from behind the big tree. Master Lu walked over and wrapped his hand in a handkerchief. He pulled out the Tanghua needle from the ground and said to Nan Xiang, "Wife, you like that kid that much? You even use Tanghua needles. I haven't seen you use Tanghua needles in 10 years." Nan Xiang reached out her hand wearing a silver glove and took the Tanghua needle. "It's all right. It's quite interesting." Gu Xiaoshan ran forward as if he was reincarnated and finally caught up with the carriage that was parked at the foot of the mountain. He looked back and saw that the other party couldn't catch up. He couldn't help but laugh with his hands on his hips. Ha ha. It's still this young master who runs faster. If you have the ability, then chase after me. Chase after me. His mouth was full of arrogance, but his body was trembling. He jumped onto the carriage. "Uncle Lu, let's go quickly." "Oh, okay." Lu Quan increased the speed of the carriage to the maximum and quickly returned to Baishui Alley. The assassin who came to capture Gu Xiaoshan didn't make it back to report to Grand Tutor Zhuang. Although it was only a small silver needle, The Tang sect's hidden weapon could take a life. This was a mistaken strategy. He originally thought that he had picked the weakest persimmon, but he didn't expect that the persimmon had a durian that could kill people. Grand Tutor Zhuang waited for a long time, but didn't hear a reply from his subordinates. He guessed that he had made a bad start. He deeply furrowed his brows. This won't do, that won't do. Do we really have to directly capture the Empress Dowager? While Grand Tutor Zhuang was racking his brains to get close to the Empress Dowager, someone had effortlessly seen her. Marquis Xianping had come to find Xiao Luleng again. He had thought about it. Using a frightening method to test him was not advisable, but he could first think of a way to stay with him. Today he wasn't looking for Xiao Luleng. He was looking for his daughter-in-law, whom he had never met. And he was really smart. Changjing, knock on the door, he ordered. Changjing let out an "oh" and walked forward. She raised her hand to knock on the door. Before she could knock, the door opened from the inside with a creak. The old chancellor and the old madam walked out. The two were going next door to play cards. Just as they reached the door, the old chancellor stopped. He saw Marquis Xianping. Marquis Xianping naturally also saw him. Seeing him come out from Xiao Liulong's courtyard, Marquis Xianping wasn't too surprised. After all, he knew that he lived next door. No matter if Xiao Luleng was Aheng or not, the old chancellor and him were neighbors. But the person beside him. Marquis Xianping looked at the old madam. A trace of astonishment flashed through his eyes. The old chancellor wanted to close the door, but it was too late. He could only quickly move a step to the side and block the old madam behind him. Unfortunately, Marquis Xianping had already seen it. Marquis Xianping narrowed his eyes dangerously. The aura around his body instantly turned cold. Old madam. Why are you blocking me? Old chancellor, don't speak. Marquis Xianping clenched his fists little by little, making a cracking sound. The old chancellor pondered. It's over, it's over. What I'm afraid of comes. This guy found Zhuang Jin's. Imperial Tutor Zhuang left, but Marquis Xianping came. This is going to ascend to heaven. Imperial Tutor Zhuang only wanted to make use of Zhuang Jin's, but Marquis Xianping had an irreconcilable hatred with Zhuang Jin's. Brother Hua. Sister-in-law Hua. Why aren't you guys here yet? We're just waiting for you too. Next door, Auntie Zhang's shout came from the room next door. Marquis Xianping's gaze swept across the old chancellor and the old madam's face with a faint smile. Brother Hua, sister-in-law Hua? It seems that I have recognized wrongly. Also, the Empress Dowager is in the temporary imperial residence. Why would she come here? The old chancellor secretly heaved a sigh of relief. After he heaved a sigh of relief, he felt that something was wrong. Marquis Xianping wasn't so stubborn. Marquis Xianping sneered. His voice was like a cold pool. Someone disguised herself as the Empress Dowager. Changjing, kill her. Digression. Empress Dowager, it's too difficult for me. Third watch, aren't you surprised? The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896428226/112783085. HTML Genius remembers this website's address in a second. www.zhhbqg.com Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 265. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. The old chancellor's temples suddenly twitched. It's fine if Marquis Xianping doesn't come, but if he does, he will kill. How did he really recognize the wrong person? He was obviously making the best of it. Empress Dowager Zhuang was recuperating in the temporary imperial residence, So who could say that the woman outside who was his wife was the Empress Dowager? The emperor didn't want to see Empress Dowager Zhuang anymore, but the royal family's reputation was bound together. Even if it was to protect the royal family's reputation and decorum, the emperor wouldn't admit that the woman outside who made the former emperor a cuckold was Empress Dowager Zhuang. Besides, the emperor originally wanted to get rid of Empress Dowager Zhuang, but the emperor had more scruples than Marquis Xianping. In addition, Empress Dowager Zhuang also had something that the emperor always wanted. If Marquis Xianping really killed Empress Dowager Zhuang, the emperor would be angry and regret that he didn't get what he wanted, but he wouldn't really take Marquis Xianping's life. Alright, it wasn't his illusion last time. Marquis Xianping was indeed cunning enough. People always said that Marquis Xianping often won battles because he relied on his bravery. In fact, they were all wrong. Bravery was important, but if Marquis Xianping didn't have any brains, he would have been fooled by the enemy. The old chancellor belonged to the party who was caught. On one hand, he had to endure the confusion brought by his guilty conscience, and on the other hand, he couldn't really let Zhuang Jinci be killed. He hurriedly said, "Can't they look alike? What's there to pretend to be?" Marquis Xianping sneered. "Heh, it's fine if my illegitimate son looks like my legitimate son, but what's the relationship between this person and the one in the palace? Sisters? The old chancellor was speechless for a moment. Can't you just be a martial artist and be a quiet martial artist? As a military general, your brain and mouth are so sharp that the civil officials will have no way out. The old chancellor expressed that he could still stay low and was determined not to lose to a military general. He looked at Marquis Xianping and said sternly, "You can't kill her. She's Liulong's grandaunt." Pausing for a moment, he recalled that his grandaunt was his grandfather's sister. Naturally, Marquis Xianping didn't have such an aunt. The old chancellor's stroke of genius came to him. His elder brother's father's aunt. This big brother referred to the eldest son of Qin Yun's mother and her ex-husband. If she was really his big brother's grandaunt, then as his half-brother, Xiao Lulang also called her grandaunt. What's more, that big brother treated Lulang very well. It was not wrong for Xiao Lulang to take care of his big brother's grandaunt in her old age. Marquis Xianping snorted. "Do you think this marquis will believe you?" The old chancellor clasped his fingers. "It's absolutely true. If it's a lie, may the heavens strike you with lightning." Rumble. A clap of thunder exploded in the sky. "Old chancellor, are you not giving me any face at all?" It was about to rain. The sky was gloomy and dark clouds rolled. It was as if there was a sea of primal chaos under the sky. The atmosphere suddenly became oppressive. Changjing wasn't in a hurry to make a move. It wasn't because he was intimidated by the old chancellor's words, but because his marbles were gone. He lowered his head and rummaged through his pocket to find his marbles. Marquis Xianping looked at the old granny, and the old granny also looked at him. Their eyes met. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky. Their faces were also flickering in the night sky, and the lightning. Even if a dragon enters a shallow abyss, it is still a dragon. Even if she had lost her memory, and was wearing a coarse hemp garment, the old granny's aura wasn't any weaker than Marquis Xianping's. In fact, under the confrontation of their gazes, there was a faint aura that belonged to Zhuang Jinci. The old chancellor felt a deep headache. He said to Marquis Xianping, "Listen to me. Perhaps what happened back then was a misunderstanding." Misunderstanding? What misunderstanding? What happened back then? Marquis Xianping and the old granny almost spoke at the same time. This. The old chancellor looked at the old granny, and then looked at Marquis Xianping. He used his hand to block and said softly, "She doesn't remember anything. Don't be like this." Marquis Xianping said coldly, "She doesn't remember, but I do. The hatred of killing my son is absolutely irreconcilable." The old chancellor scratched his head. "How can that be called killing? At most, it was poisoning, right? It was something that happened when Aheng was 4 or 5 years old. She was poisoned in the palace. It was said that it was done by the Empress Dowager." Marquis Xianping said coldly, "Not killing is not considered killing? My son not dying is my son's luck. It's not an excuse for her to absolve herself." "I harmed your son?" The old granny couldn't remember, but she wasn't in a hurry to absolve herself, because she often felt that she was indeed full of evil tricks. Maybe she really was an evil person in the past. Marquis Xianping didn't care why Zhuang Jin appeared here. He didn't need to ask the reason or the process. He only needed the result. That is, he wants to kill Zhuang Jin. Changjing, are you deaf or stupid? Do you not understand human language? Why aren't you doing it? Found it. Changjing dug out the marble that fell into her pocket and put it into another pocket that was still intact. Her expression turned cold, and she switched to killer mode in a second. Lulang, you have returned. The old chancellor looked behind Marquis Xianping. Taking advantage of Marquis Xianping's slight pause, he pulled the old granny's hand and returned to the house. Closing the door with a bang, he locked the door. Leave through the back door, he said to the old granny. Did something happen? Yao Shi heard the movement and came out. Nothing. Quickly returned to the house. The old chancellor waved his hand at Yao Shi. Marquis Xianping's target was Zhuang Jin. He wouldn't kill the innocent. He wasn't worried about Yao Shi's safety. He pulled the old granny and escaped through the back door. The most important thing was to quickly find Lulang. Only he could stop Marquis Xianping. But just as the two crossed the threshold of the back door, they saw Changjing standing in front of them with a murderous look. Old Chancellor took in a breath of cold air. They couldn't go back. Marquis Xianping was blocking the front door. That, little brother, can we discuss? The old Chancellor smiled and suddenly rushed over to hug Changjing. He said to the old granny, quickly go. Go find Lulang. He's at Lin Brat's house. Lin Qingye's house was nearby, and it would only take a quarter of an hour to walk there. But how could the old chancellor hug an assassin like Changjing? Changjing lifted him up. Changjing wasn't interested in people other than his target. After throwing the old chancellor to the side, he stretched out his hand to kill the old granny. He only used his hand to grab the back of the old granny's neck, and with a gentle twist, he actually broke her neck. At the crucial moment, a small figure flashed over and blocked in front of the old granny. He raised his small arm and blocked Changjing's arm. Changjing used his right hand, but no one knew that his dominant hand was actually his left hand. He raised his left hand and slapped towards Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao received this palm forcefully, and the huge force forced the two of them to move back 2 steps. Changjing looked at Gu Jiao in astonishment, and then looked at his own hand. He was actually able to receive a palm from him? Gu Jiao thought, ugh. Half of my arm is going to be numb. Where did this expert come from? Great aunt, grand uncle, you two leave first. Gu Jiao stopped Changjing and said to the two of them. The old chancellor didn't care about being pretentious and courteous as he pulled the old granny and sprinted towards Lin Qingye's residence. Of course, he didn't forget to turn back and remind Changjing. She's the daughter-in-law of Marquis Xianping. You're not allowed to use your true strength. His words were effective as Changjing's murderous aura was reduced by half. Changjing's martial arts was much higher than those experts in the martial arts school. Even if his murderous aura was reduced by half, it wasn't that easy for Gu Jiao to defeat him. Of course, it was also slightly difficult for Changjing to get rid of Gu Jiao. The two of them started to fight intensely. The old chancellor brought the old granny and sprinted nonstop. The reason why they could still run at this age was mainly due to Gu Jiao's good daily care. Their bodies were much more robust than before, and the old chancellor even faintly felt that they had more black hair. However, misfortunes never come singly. Even though they got rid of Marquis Xianping and Changjing's evil clutches, they encountered a group of masked men in black. The men in black blocked the entrance of the alley. In order to get to Lin Qingye's house as soon as possible, the old chancellor brought the old granny to take a shortcut which was secluded, and almost no one passed by. This also meant that there weren't any officials patrolling nearby. It's over, it's over. This is what it means to have a wolf in the front and a tiger in the back. The other party didn't come with good intentions. It didn't seem good whether they were captured by them or killed by Changjing when they got back. Who are you people? The old chancellor asked vigilantly. More than 10 men in black opened up a path with a swoosh. There was a carriage parked behind them. Hearing the question, The curtain of the carriage was lifted and Grand Tutor Zhuang walked down from the carriage. Grand Tutor Zhuang put his hands in his wide sleeves with an arrogant and calm expression. He strolled to the front of the two people and took a glance at the old granny and the old chancellor. His gaze turned cold. "So it's you." No wonder he felt something was wrong when he saw them at Jade Water Alley last time. It turned out that they were acquaintances. No wonder he closed the door in a panic, and no wonder he didn't have the face to see people. "Why are you here? And with the Empress Dowager?" Before Chancellor He resigned, he fought with the Empress Dowager to the death. They fought for 2 dynasties from the reign of the late emperor to the current emperor. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they were sworn enemies. Yet they appeared at the same place at the same time, and were even close. There should be something he didn't know, but he couldn't think about it in detail now. The most important thing now was to bring the Empress Dowager back. Grand Tutor Zhuang's gaze landed on the old chancellor's hand, which was holding the old granny's wrist. His expression changed and he shouted sternly, "Impudent! Is the Empress Dowager's phoenix body something an old man like you can profane? Not to mention pulling her wrist, he couldn't even pull the corner of her clothes." The old chancellor withdrew his hand with a guilty conscience. Grand Tutor Zhuang didn't dare to speak sternly to the old granny. He said gently, "Sister, go back with big brother." The old granny looked at him with disdain. "Get lost." Grand Tutor Zhuang was speechless. Grand Tutor Zhuang took a deep breath and told himself that the Empress Dowager had only lost her memory. Her words weren't her original intention, and it wasn't the Empress Dowager's imperial decree. When the Empress Dowager remembered her identity, she would forgive him for what he had done today. He turned his head and ordered the man in black, "Take the Empress away. That person." He glanced at the old chancellor. "Get rid of him." The Empress Dowager of a country actually had an affair with a man outside. Once this kind of scandal was spread out, facing the public censure would be a light punishment. Her reputation and status would probably be lost. The emperor was worried about not having an excuse to pull the Empress Dowager down, so he couldn't give the emperor any chance. The old chancellor said coldly, "Zhuang Boyang, you're crazy. Are you going to kill people on the streets?" Each and every one of them really didn't take human life seriously. Grand Tutor Zhuang said indifferently, "You tried to assassinate the Empress Dowager. I killed the assassin, so what crime am I guilty of?" After saying that, he made a killing gesture and ignored the old chancellor. On the other side, Gu Jiao and Chang Jing's forehands were tied together. This fellow's martial arts was too high. Gu Jiao's strength had only recovered to 30% of her previous life strength, so she really couldn't beat this fellow to death. Suddenly, Gu Jiao saw the pearls in his pocket. She remembered the first time she saw him. He seemed to be looking for pearls on the ground. Gu Jiao's eyes flashed and she used one knee to hit his lower abdomen. Chang Jing instinctively freed his hand to block her attack. Gu Jiao freed her hand and tore off his pocket. His marbles rolled all over the ground. Chang Jing thought, his marbles. Chang Jing ignored Gu Jiao and went to pick up the pearls. Gu Jiao hurriedly chased after the old chancellor and her grandaunt. It was as if a hole was torn in the sky and it started to rain heavily. The old madam and the old chancellor were separated by the men in black. The men in black didn't dare to be rough with the old madam, and only tried their best to pull her into the carriage. They weren't so polite to the old chancellor. The old chancellor was kicked to the ground, and was in so much pain that he almost couldn't straighten his body. "Stop," the old madam said to Grand Tutor Zhuang. Grand Tutor Zhuang turned a deaf ear. "Empress, please get on the carriage." One of the men in black pulled out his sword and slashed towards the old chancellor's neck. Suddenly, a silver needle pierced through the thick curtain of rain, and pierced the wrist of the assassin in black. The assassin in black felt a pain in his wrist, and the long sword in his hand fell to the ground. The rest of the people saw the situation and looked towards Gu Jiao. The next moment, they waved the long sword in their hands and slashed towards Gu Jiao. It was raining heavily. Gu Jiao shuttled back and forth in the rain of swords as several people surrounded her. Gu Jiao leaped and pressed down on the head of one of the men in black. She rolled over his back and pulled out the sword at his waist and cut off a long sword that was swinging towards her. She held the sword and knelt on the ground with one knee. Her eyes were like torches and her whole body was emitting a terrifying murderous aura. These people weren't as skilled as Chongjing. She quickly opened up a path and arrived behind the old madam. However, the moment she pulled the old madam, one of the men in black placed his long sword on the old chancellor's neck. "Don't move. Otherwise I'll kill him." Gu Jiao suddenly threw the dagger in her hand and smashed that man's long sword. Gu Jiao took a few steps forward and caught the dagger that fell from the air. She kicked the man to kneel on the ground and grabbed his hair. She could cut his throat with just one slash. Gu Jiao had been here for a long time and had been very restrained. She didn't use weapons and only used silver needles that didn't have blood because blood would make her excited. Her godfather said that she was the perfect tool to kill. Probably so. She did surgeries not to save people's lives, but for her own cultivation. She had to control her ruthlessness. However, her blade had already cut the skin of the other party, and fine blood slid down the blade along with the rain. The ruthlessness in Gu Jiao's body began to stir and her hand that was holding the dagger began to tremble. As long as she killed one, she would kill the last one. Jiao Jiao. Suddenly, the old madam grabbed her hand and wrapped the back of her young hand with her palm that had lost its luster due to old age, and was covered with wrinkles. "Jiao Jiao, be a good girl and come to Grandaunt." The voice was clearly in her ears, but it seemed to come from above the water. "Jiao Jiao. Jiao Jiao." The old madam called her again and again. Gu Jiao finally suppressed the ruthlessness in her blood. The red blood in her eyes faded little by little. She turned her head and threw away the dagger in her hand. "Grandaunt, I'll take you home." The old madam nodded. "Okay." Grand Tutor Zhuang was directly shocked by Gu Jiao's murderous aura, and forgot to stop her. The men in black also looked at Gu Jiao with fear. They pointed their swords at her while carefully avoiding her. Her strength wasn't only in her skills, it was also in her aura that wanted to kill everyone in the world. It was simply too terrifying. Therefore, even if Gu Jiao was following beside the old madam, and was obediently letting the old madam hold her hand, no one dared to act rashly. The change happened the moment they turned to leave. The rain was too heavy, and a building that was on the verge of collapse couldn't withstand the washing of the heavy rain. The beam snapped and the huge roof tilted down, smashing towards Gu Jiao and the old madam. Everything happened too quickly, and old Chancellor didn't even have time to pounce over and knock them away. Gu Jiao's ears twitched and she raised her head. The huge roof came pressing down like a glacier, and even she couldn't push it away. She turned around and protected her grandaunt's waist with one hand, and the back of her head with the other. She then used her elbow to fall to the ground. She protected her grandaunt under her body. The old madam looked at the roof pressing down on Gu Jiao, and she couldn't push Gu Jiao away. She could only stretch out her hand to protect Gu Jiao's head. She protected Gu Jiao's head, but she couldn't protect her own head. A wooden plank suddenly smashed onto her forehead. Empress Dowager. Zhuangjin's. She felt a sharp pain in her head and a hole seemed to have opened up in the depths of her mind. Countless strange yet familiar images rushed out along with her memories. Jin's tell father, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" "I want to be a bird." "Why?" "I can fly. That way I won't have to be trapped in the house all day." Jin's, from today onwards, you are the Empress of Great Zhao Empire. Zhen and the Empress will be together for 100 years, and be united forever. His Majesty is resting in Wanfu Palace. Her Majesty doesn't have to wait for His Majesty to admire the moon. His Majesty will come again at the beginning of next month. Jin's. In this lifetime, have you ever loved Jin? Long live Empress Dowager. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964286/112759247. HTML Genius remembers this website's address in a second. www.zhhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com Chapter 266. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. When Gu Jiao woke up, she found herself lying on a dry bed. She raised her head and looked around. She recognized that this was her boudoir in the medical center. She tried to move her body and found that she was in pain all over. "You're awake?" Xiao Liulong's voice sounded softly above her head. However, she was lying on her stomach and her neck was limited, so she couldn't see him for a while. "Don't move, I'll come over." Xiao Liulang took a few steps forward and sat down on the edge of the bed beside her. She was sweating a little, so Xiao Liulang took a handkerchief and wiped her forehead carefully. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Does it hurt?" "It doesn't hurt," she said. The physical pain couldn't do anything to her. She was used to it and didn't feel anything. She looked around. Xiao Liulang looked at her restless appearance and couldn't help but speak with a stern tone. "You're seriously injured, don't move." His tone was stern, but his eyes were full of worry. He was originally tutoring Lin Qingye and Feng Lin at Lin Qingye's house today. Suddenly, there was a storm, so he felt uneasy. Sure enough, Lu Quan came over not long after and said that something happened to Gu Jiao and the old lady. Lu Quan had also just arrived home. After experiencing Gu Xiaoshan being kidnapped, he hadn't recovered from the incident yet when Gu Jiao and the old lady got into trouble. The person was sent to the medical center by Marquis Xianping. Gu Jiao and the old lady were injured and both fainted on the spot. Marquis Xianping originally came with Changjing to kill the old lady, but he saw Grand Tutor Zhuang. With Grand Tutor Zhuang there, they naturally couldn't kill them. When Marquis Xianping arrived, Gu Jiao and the old lady had already been dug out from under the ruins. Two large groups of people surrounded the old lady, but Gu Jiao only had the old chancellor by her side. Marquis Xianping sent Gu Jiao, who was covered in blood, to the clinic. The matriarch's injuries were also not optimistic. Her head was bleeding profusely. Imperial Tutor Zhuang was worried that she would not be able to hold on until she returned home. So he followed Marquis Xianping and brought her to the medical hall. Gu Jiao's back was hit by the roof. She almost broke her spine. Dr. Song said that if her spine is broken, she will face the risk of being paralyzed and may not be able to stand up for the rest of her life. Hearing this, Xiao Liulang broke out in a cold sweat. However, even though her spine was saved, her back and legs were swollen and bruised, as well as scratches from wood chips. Then there was her elbow. When she fell while protecting the old lady, she should have used at least one hand to support herself. However, she used one hand to protect her grey tant's waist, and the other hand to protect her grey tant's head. In the end, her knees and elbows hit the ground and they were all swollen. But she actually said that it didn't hurt and even moved around. Xiao Liulang felt that as her husband, even if it was only in name, he should reason with her. He could no longer ignore his own safety and couldn't leave her to recuperate. Gu Jiao looked around blankly. "Where's Great Aunt?" All of Xiao Liulong's words were stuck in his throat. In another room, an old doctor surnamed Lu was bandaging the old lady's head injury. The old lady was still unconscious, but her breathing was not as weak as before. "Is she all right?" Imperial Tutor Zhuang asked. Old Dr. Lu did not know the other party's identity, but he could tell that they were either rich or noble. He cupped his hands in salute and said, "Replying to this master, this old madam's injuries are not serious. The wound is not deep and the bleeding has stopped. She will be fine once she wakes up. On the other hand, our Miss Gu's injuries were too serious." He could not bear to look at her. Imperial Tutor Zhuang felt relieved and gave old Dr. Lu a silver ingot. "You may leave." "Yes." Old Dr. Lu took his medicine box and left. Imperial Tutor Zhuang stood guard by the bed. Thinking about what had just happened, he also felt a burst of fear. He was so worried that the Empress Dowager had suffered a serious injury. Imperial Tutor Zhuang did not wait for too long before the person on the bed slowly opened her eyes. Imperial Tutor Zhuang quickly stood up and looked at her excitedly. "Younger sister, you're awake?" He thought that she had not recovered her memories yet, so it would be easier for her to accept this form of address. But when he met the other party's eyes, his entire person froze. Even though she was ill, her eyes were fierce and domineering. It was a gaze that belonged only to Zhuang Jin's. Imperial tutor Zhuang took a step back and straightened his clothes. He reached out his hands and his legs gradually moved back. He cupped his hands in salute. This official respectfully welcomes the Empress Dowager. From now on, there was no great-aunt in the world, only the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager sat in Imperial tutor Zhuang's carriage and set off for the Zhuang residence. Before leaving, Imperial tutor Zhuang had the imperial bodyguards go to the residence to inform the family. The whole family, Imperial tutor Zhuang's eldest son Zhuang Ping, his second son Zhuang Zhou, his third concubine-born son Zhuang Mu, his eldest daughter-in-law Madame Zhen, his second daughter-in-law Madame Feng, his third daughter-in-law Madame Tan, and his children, including Royal Princein, all stood outside the residence in the wind and rain, waiting for the Empress Dowager's arrival. The carriage stopped outside the residence swaying in the wind and rain. Zhuang Ping was the first to kneel down. After he knelt down, everyone present knelt down. He cupped his hands in salute and said loudly, "This official respectfully welcomes the Empress Dowager. Long live the Empress Dowager." Everyone kowtowed. "Respectfully welcomes the Empress Dowager. Long live the Empress Dowager." Imperial tutor Zhuang came down from another carriage and personally held an umbrella for the Empress Dowager against the wind and rain. The Empress Dowager was still wearing the clothes from Bishui Alley, but this did not affect her aura. These people were all her family, but they were all kneeling at her feet. She glanced at the crowd and said, "You may rise." "Thank you, Empress Dowager." Everyone respectfully responded and stood up in a well-behaved manner. Everyone's clothes were soaked, but even the youngest 3-year-old child did not dare to make a sound. Everyone knew that the Empress Dowager valued rules. Imperial tutor Zhuang smiled and said, "Quickly enter the house. The rain is heavy. The Empress Dowager is injured and should not be drenched in the rain." Imperial tutor Zhuang walked into the Zhuang residence and entered the courtyard that the Zhuang family had carefully prepared for her. This was Zhuang Jin's courtyard before she was married. Every blade of grass, every tree, every flower, and every tree inside was arranged according to the way she was before she was married. Decades had passed and it still maintained its original appearance. Empress Dowager Zhuang did not even lift her eyelids as she walked up the steps. However, when she passed by a crabapple tree, she took a second look and felt that there was a child missing from the tree. She entered the house. In the Zhuang family, only Imperial tutor Zhuang, Royal Princein, and their trusted subordinates knew about the Empress Dowager Zhuang's leprosy. Therefore, Imperial tutor Zhuang did not even call his own son, and only brought Royal Princein. After the three of them entered the house, Imperial tutor Zhuang called 2 maids over. "The people around the Empress Dowager are all in the summer palace. These are the servants that hung, or selected. They will stay by the Empress Dowager's side to serve her." "No need. Go out." Empress Dowager Zhuang sat down and waved her hand. "I don't need anyone to serve me." The grandmother and granddaughter were both stunned. Empress Dowager Zhuang was very formal, and usually had at least 7 or 8 palace maids and eunuchs serving her. Empress Dowager Zhuang reached for the teapot on the table and poured tea. Imperial tutor Zhuang frowned and looked at the 2 maids. "What are you doing?" "Serve tea to the Empress Dowager." The 2 maids hurried forward to pour tea. Empress Dowager Zhuang slammed the teapot on the table with a trace of impatience. The 2 maids were so scared that they fell to their knees. Empress Dowager Zhuang panicked for a moment. She seemed to understand that her reaction was not appropriate for her status. She said lightly, "Pour it." "Yes." The 2 maids looked at each other and stood up. One poured tea and the other served snacks. Empress Dowager Zhuang had no appetite. She took a sip of tea and let them leave. "What happened during this period of time?" Empress Dowager Zhuang asked solemnly. Imperial tutor Zhuang and Commandery Princein exchanged a look and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. It was Commandery Princein who spoke. "You don't remember what happened?" Empress Dowager Zhuang pressed her aching temples. "I only remember that I had leprosy and was forced to be sent to Leprosy Mountain. I escaped when no one was paying attention. After that, I seem to have gone to many places. In the end, I fainted from hunger. I don't remember what happened after that. Where did you find me? How many days was I unconscious? Unconscious? How many days? The two maids couldn't help but gasp. Empress Dowager Zhuang remembered the past, but she didn't remember what happened during this period of time. Her memory stopped at the day she fainted in the village. Thinking of something, Empress Dowager Zhuang said, "By the way, how is my leprosy?" Commandery Princeton said, "Your leprosy? You didn't have leprosy. It was a misdiagnosis." Imperial Tutor Zhuang interrupted Commandery Princeton. Misdiagnosis? Empress Dowager Zhuang frowned. Imperial Tutor Zhuang said seriously, "Yes, it was a misdiagnosis. To be honest, you have been missing for more than a year. If you really had leprosy, it wouldn't be like this." Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at her hands and touched her face. "I clearly remember that there were symptoms," Imperial Tutor Zhuang said. "Leprosy can't be cured. You only have similar symptoms, but you don't have leprosy. In Zhao country, leprosy couldn't be cured. It was said that only the most powerful Yan country had the means to cure leprosy." Empress Dowager Zhuang paused and said, "Then where was I when I was missing?" Imperial Tutor Zhuang said, "The Empress Dowager was controlled by His Majesty's people. I don't know what drug they gave the Empress Dowager, but the Empress Dowager lost her memory." This official went to see the Empress Dowager several times, but was mercilessly blocked by them. Today this official had no choice but to send a secret guard to rob her. As a result, the Empress Dowager was injured. Commandery Princeton wanted to say something but stopped. "Great-aunt! Great-aunt!" Zhuang Mingdia's voice suddenly came from outside the room. Empress Dowager Zhuang's expression became absent-minded again. A name flashed through her mind. It seemed that someone had called her that before, but she couldn't remember the name. "It's Mingdai." Imperial Tutor Zhuang smiled. She should be with her sister. "Empress Dowager, do you want to see them?" "Mingdai." The one who called her grandaunt was Mingdai? That's right. Otherwise, which girl would call her grandaunt? Empress Dowager Zhuang nodded. "Come in." Zhuang Mingdai pushed open the door and happily entered the room. "Great-aunt." "Call her Empress Dowager." Imperial Tutor Zhuang reminded with a serious face. "Oh." Zhuang Mingdai reluctantly responded and respectfully bowed. "Mingdai greets the Empress Dowager." Zhuang Yueshi, who entered the room one after the other, also bowed. "Yueshi greets the Empress Dowager." Empress Dowager Zhuang nodded. Zhuang Mingdai sat down beside Empress Dowager Zhuang, held her arm, and said intimately, "Empress Dowager, I miss you so much. Why didn't you summon me?" Imperial Tutor Zhuang's face was stern. "Don't be unruly." Zhuang Mingdai snorted. Empress Dowager Zhuang loved the children of the Zhuang family very much. First, she didn't have children of her own. Second, these children were really good at making people happy. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at Zhuang Mingdai beside her, and then looked at the gentle and demure Zhuang Yueshi. In fact, Empress Dowager Zhuang used to dote on Zhuang Mingdai. A crying child would get milk. Zhuang Mingdai knew how to act spoiled, so she naturally got more love. But today, Empress Dowager Zhuang inexplicably wanted to get closer to the quiet Zhuang Yueshi. She looked at Zhuang Yueshi in a daze. Imperial Tutor Zhuang gave Zhuang Yueshi a look. Zhuang Yueshi understood, and walked over to sit on the other side of Empress Dowager Zhuang. Empress Dowager Zhuang raised her hand and touched Zhuang Yueshi's left cheek. "No more." "No more?" Zhuang Mingdai asked strangely. "Yes, no more?" Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't know herself. Medical Center. Gu Jiao stood quietly at the entrance of the hall. She was still injured and the cold wind blew in, carrying with it the cold rain. Xiao Lulang held an umbrella above her head. "Great-aunt left," Xiao Lulang said. "Will she come back?" Gu Jiao looked back and stared at him. At this moment, she finally had the naivety and hesitation of a 15-year-old girl. But Xiao Lulang couldn't feel comforted. Xiao Lulang sighed, looked down and said in a low voice, "Jiao Jiao, she is no longer great-aunt. She won't be great-aunt in the future." Gu Jiao stared blankly at the pouring rain. Her small body was a little lonely. Xiao Lulang put down the umbrella, turned her body and gently pressed her into his arms. Her head rested on his firm chest. She shook her head, opened her eyes and said seriously, "I don't feel bad." Xiao Liulong's hand around her waist tightened. His large palm gently held her head. Yes. In the courtyard, Guyan was sleeping. Suddenly, he woke up and sat up. Yaoshi was given a fright by him. "What is it?" Guyan didn't speak. A drop of tear fell from his eyes. He wiped the tear with his fingertips and looked at it. Yaoshi also saw it. She was surprised. "Why are you crying?" "Guyan, I am not crying." These weren't his tears. They were Jiaojiao's tears. Digression. Blade Light Mail. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964286/112756508. HTML Genius 1 second. Remember this website address. www.zhhbqg.com. Bikugo mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 267. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. Empress Dowager Zhuang talked with the Zhuang family for a while and felt tired. Grand Tutor Zhuang left with the children. He let Zhuang Mengdai and Zhuang Yueshi go back to their own courtyards to rest. Then he said to Princeton, "Come to my study." Yes. Princeton went to Grand Tutor Zhuang's study. There was an oil lamp in the study. The light was not too dim but not too bright. The wind and rain outside continued without any signs of abating. Grand Tutor Zhuang waved his hand and dismissed the servants. Only he and Princeton were left in the room. The Empress Dowager was found, but Grand Tutor Zhuang found that his grandson was not as excited as he imagined. In fact, he had been like this since the court examination. This made Grand Tutor Zhuang suspect that Princeton lost his confidence after one failure. Grand Tutor Zhuang said sincerely, "One imperial examination is no big deal. In the future, you will have a meteoric rise in the officialdom. You can still beat him. To be exact, you will definitely beat him." Life was very long. A small victory or loss was nothing. The most important thing was to look forward and not look back. The Empress Dowager and the Zhuang family are behind you. Princeton did not do this because of the imperial examination results. At least not completely. In his opinion, he lost to Xiao Lulang because the emperor wanted to suppress the Zhuang family. It was reasonable for him to lose. But on the day they paraded through the streets on horseback, Gu Jiao treated Xiao Lulang differently from how she treated him. This truly hurt his heart. However, he could not say this. "I understand. If there is nothing else, I will leave first." He bowed and was about to leave. The Empress Dowager's matter. Grand Tutor Zhuang stopped Princeton. His eyes were full of meaning. "You should know what to say and what not to say." Princeton asked numbly, "Grandfather, what do you think should be said and what not to say?" Grand Tutor Zhuang was dissatisfied with his attitude. His eyes turned cold. "You are young. I allow you to be a little emotional. But don't go overboard." Royal Princeton laughed at himself. "Is the Empress Dowager really controlled by His Majesty? Then why did Your Majesty personally go to Jiangnan to find her?" Grand Tutor Zhuang said. "Xiao Lulang has thrown in his lot with Marquis Xianping. Marquis Xianping is the Emperor's trusted official. Who knows if the Emperor's trip to Jiangnan is a smokescreen to fool us?" Royal Princeton sneered. "She cured the Empress Dowager's leprosy. She even saved the Empress Dowager's life. Does grandfather think that she is using her?" Grand Tutor Zhuang said in a heavy voice, "The Empress Dowager does not have leprosy. Leprosy cannot be cured. Also, there was no need to save her. They just needed the Empress Dowager and couldn't let anything happen to her. If it was any of the Zhuang Manor's guards, they would do the same. They are all willing to die for the Empress Dowager. Royal Prince and did not argue with his grandfather anymore. He lowered his eyes. If grandfather says so, then so be it. With that he bowed and turned to leave. Grand Tutor Zhuang looked at his back and said, "Remember your status. Don't let your emotions affect your decisions." "Got it." A low reply came from him in the night. The rain was very heavy. Gu Jiao's injury was also very serious. She couldn't return to Bishui Alley. Tonight, she would rest in the small courtyard of the medical center. Dr. Song boiled a bowl of calming soup. Xiao Lulang fed it to her. The medicine took effect and she quickly fell asleep. Marquis Xianping was under the eaves. Beside him was the depressed old chancellor. Chang Jing was playing with marbles on the floor at the end of the corridor. Marquis Xuanping's hands were in his wide sleeves. He unconsciously frowned and looked at the heavy rain that was like the Milky Way. So the Empress Dowager fainted in front of Lulang and that girl's house? I heard so. The old chancellor said dejectedly. Marquis Xianping said, "Then do they know it's the Empress Dowager?" The old chancellor looked at him coldly. "You are setting a trap for me." Marquis Xuanping's expression didn't change. "I didn't." This old guy looked like he had lost his soul after losing his wife. He thought it would be easy to get information out of him. Of course, that girl wouldn't know it's the Empress Dowager. The real Xiao Lulang also wouldn't know the Empress Dowager. Only Ahing would know. So if the old chancellor hesitated and said, "How do I know?" then he would be exposed. Marquis Xianping had a toothache. Old man, he's not easy to fool. But then again, that ugly girl was actually Xiao Liulang's wife? The first time she saved him, he gave her the smallest silver nude. The second time she saved the emperor, he gave her the second smallest silver nude. Thinking of his stingy behavior in front of his daughter-in-law, Marquis Xuanping's toothache became even more painful. Fuck, I was too careless. Lu Quan went home to deliver a message, saying Gu Jiao's situation. Xiao Lulang was taking care of her in the medical center. He told the family not to worry and not to go see her in the rain. Taking care of her body was the most important. These were Xiao Liulang's original words. Yao Shi was pregnant, Guyan had a heart problem, and little Jing Kong was too small. It was best if they didn't go out. Only Gu Xiaoshan was sturdy enough. But because of this, he should stay and take care of the family. How did she get hurt? Guyan asked. It's because the rain was too heavy and the roof slipped. Lu Quan said embarrassedly. There were some things that couldn't be said in front of the children, but he had explained the details to Yao Shi. Only now did Yao Shi know that she hadn't heard wrongly. That young guard called Wu Yang had indeed called Grand Aunt the Empress Dowager. Her feelings were very complicated. On one hand, she was very shocked by her grandaunt's past. On the other hand, she felt a deep sense of reluctance towards her grandaunt's departure. She was a woman of the boudoir, and was often away from the capital. She hadn't heard many rumors about Empress Dowager Zhuang. She understood that the person was the children's grandaunt. She seemed to be heartless, but she was very protective of everyone. Are they all right? Yao Shi asked. Lu Quan smiled and said, they're fine. They're all external injuries. Gu Jiao's injuries were more serious, but her life wasn't in danger. She just needed to rest for a long time. Little Jing Kong looked around and stuck his head out. After looking around for a long time, he didn't see anything. He walked into the room, spread his hands and asked, "Where's Grandaunt?" Lu Quan didn't know how to answer. Guyan seemed to have sensed something, but he didn't say anything. Yao Shi paused and gently pulled little Jing Kong, whose head was soaked by the rain, into her embrace. She used a handkerchief to wipe his little bald head and said, "Grandaunt went home." Little Jing Kong tilted his head and had a puzzled expression. "No, I didn't see her." Yao Shi held back the bitterness in her heart and stroked his little bald head. "She went back to Grandaunt's home." Little Jing Kong spread his hands. "Isn't this Grandaunt's home?" The heavy rain continued for several days. The nearby rivers were flooded. It didn't clear up until the 6th day of the 5th month. The Ministry of Works was busy controlling the flooding in the streets of the capital, and unblocking the underground pipes to restore the citizens' normal mobility. The Imperial College and the major academies also resumed school. In the 5th month, a major event occurred in the capital. The Empress Dowager, who was recuperating in the temporary imperial residence, suddenly announced that she had recovered. She also proudly returned to the palace with the Empress Dowager's ceremonial procession. The citizens all came out to watch. They wanted to see the Empress Dowager's elegance. This was not inferior to the parade of petitioners. After all, petitioners paraded through the streets once every 3 years, but the Empress Dowager only went out a few times in her lifetime. The Empress Dowager went to the temporary imperial residence to recuperate secretly. The citizens did not know. The last time they saw the Empress Dowager's ceremonial procession was when the late emperor passed away. She sent the late emperor off and carried his coffin out of the imperial palace. From then on, the virtuous Empress Dowager became the powerful Empress Dowager Zhuang. Lu Quan had just sent little Jing Kong to the Imperial College. The noise on the streets attracted the attention of the students. Little Jing Kong also ran out and squeezed into the crowd. He looked at the Empress Dowager's ceremonial procession, which was escorted by thousands of imperial guards. In front of the procession, there were officials holding a sign for silence. Behind them were dozens of dignified eunuchs and palace maids. Behind them was a luxurious carriage. Wow! What a big carriage! Little Jing Kong exclaimed. Empress Dowager, long live the Empress Dowager. The citizens along the way knelt down and kowtowed to the person in the carriage. Little Jing Kong did not kowtow, but he was small, so it was not out of place for him to stand. He stared at the gorgeous carriage. Suddenly, the curtain of the carriage was blown open by the wind, revealing the Empress Dowager wearing a heavy phoenix crown and a gorgeous phoenix robe. Although her clothes and aura were different, little Jing Kong recognized her at a glance. Great-aunt. The carriage went past the gate of the Imperial College at a moderate speed. Great-aunt. Great-aunt. Little Jing Kong chased the carriage along the street. However, the citizens' voices were so loud that his small voice was ruthlessly suppressed. Ouch. He fell and rolled to the side of an Imperial Guard's feet. The Imperial Guard helped him up with a dignified look. Whose child is it? Take it back? Hers. Hers. Little Jing Kong pointed at Empress Dowager Zhuang's carriage. The Imperial Guard said sternly, "How dare you? That's the Empress Dowager." Little Jing Kong stomped his feet. It's Great-aunt. It was Great-aunt. He could not be wrong. An uncle next to him laughed. Child, that's the Empress Dowager in the palace, not your Great-aunt. This child must be an idiot. He couldn't even tell his Great-aunt from the Empress Dowager. Little Jing Kong grunted seriously. So Great-aunt lived in the palace? Little Chi, Little Chi. Little Jing Kong ran into the classroom of the Imperial College and woke up Qin Chuyu, who was lying on the table and drooling. Take me to the palace. I want to find Great-aunt. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found on the internet. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896428226/112750595. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bkuj mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 268. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find online. Your Great-aunt? Is she in the palace? Yes. I saw her just now. They said she lives in the palace. Qin Chuyu was confused. Lives in the palace? Only the masters of the palace, such as the Empress Dowager, the imperial concubines and the princes, lived in the palace. However, there were many maids and nannies in the palace. Maybe one of them was his great-aunt? What's her name? Qin Chuyu asked. My great-aunt's name is... Little Jing Kong remembered that he didn't know his great-aunt's name. I don't know. Well, Qin Chuyu sighed. If you don't know her name, it'll be hard to find her. There are more people in the palace than in the Imperial College. Little Jing Kong carefully recalled, and a thought flashed in his mind. He said, they call her Empress Dowager. Cough. Qin Chuyu choked. The Empress Dowager? Your great-aunt is the Empress Dowager? Are you a member of the Zhuang family? Little Jing Kong thought for a while and said seriously, I was a farmer in the countryside. Now that we moved to the capital, I don't farm anymore, so I'm not a farmer anymore. Qin Chuyu thought, what does that have to do with farming? Why aren't you a member of the Zhuang family after moving to the capital? Can this be changed at will? The two kids talked for a long time, but Qin Chuyu still didn't know if little Jing Kong was a member of the Zhuang family. He was only 8 years old. He didn't understand, but he also knew that his mother and noble consort Zhuang didn't get along. Qin Chuyu said seriously, if you're a member of the Zhuang family, I can't play with you anymore. Little Jing Kong widened his eyes and said, but I'm not a farmer anymore. You can play with me. Well, okay. He didn't want to leave his little friend. But I can't take you to the palace today. My sister-in-law is sick recently, and my brother is in a bad mood. I'll make him unhappy if I take you to the palace. Wait for 2 days, I'll take you to the palace. Little Jing Kong thought, that's the only way. Empress Dowager Zhuang returned to Renshou Palace, after more than a year. Everything in the Renshou Palace was the same as before. Even the palace servants were the same as before she left the palace. Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager. She didn't inform the emperor in advance. Empress Dowager Zhuang sat on the phoenix chair above the steps of the main hall. She wore a black robe embroidered with golden phoenixes and a golden phoenix crown on her head. She looked graceful and luxurious, but also domineering. The emperor stood on the white marble floor in front of her, his face full of respect and filial piety. Mother Empress Dowager's phoenix body is in good health. It is truly a great fortune for the country. Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager, Empress. Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager, Empress Dowager. The light in the emperor's eyes moved. He smiled at Empress Dowager Zhuang and said, the road to the temporary residence is long. Imperial Mother must be tired. A Ken brought Imperial Physician Liang to check Imperial Mother's pulse. Present. Imperial Physician Liang, who was over 50 years old, walked forward with a medicine box. He knelt down and kowtowed to Empress Dowager Zhuang. This official respectfully welcomes the Empress Dowager. Long live the Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager Zhuang sneered. She stretched out her hand and casually said, the emperor is filial. I won't reject the emperor's good intentions. The emperor gave Imperial Physician Liang a meaningful glance, indicating that he should take Empress Dowager Zhuang's pulse. Imperial Physician Liang walked on his knees to the Empress Dowager's feet and placed the medicine chest on the ground. After opening it, he took out a clean silk cloth and placed it on the Empress Dowager's wrist. Then he took the Empress Dowager's pulse through the silk cloth. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. Imperial Physician Liang, how is Aijia's pulse? Imperial Physician Liang withdrew his hand and put the silk cloth away. He cupped his hands and said, the Empress Dowager's pulse is stable and seems to be more healthy than before. The emperor furrowed his brows. Empress Dowager Zhuang faintly raised the corner of her lips. The emperor is very disappointed? The emperor hurriedly said. How could that be? This son has always hoped that mother will recover soon. Live a long life and live a long life. Empress Dowager Zhuang sneered. With the emperor's auspicious words, Aijia will live a long life. Aijia also wants to see Zhao country grow stronger day by day. The people have enough food and clothing, and return the world to a peaceful and prosperous era. The emperor's hands, which were hidden under his wide sleeves, clenched into fists. Empress Dowager Zhuang smiled and said, Aijia knows of the emperor's filial piety. If there is nothing else, the emperor should be busy. Aijia is not here. Presumably the emperor is very busy. These words were somewhat meaningful. What was the emperor busy with? It was unknown whether he was busy dealing with state affairs or busy cutting off the Empress Dowager's henchmen. The emperor said, "This son will leave first. Mother, take care of your phoenix body. This son will come to visit mother another day." "No need," Empress Dowager Zhuang said. The emperor was slightly stunned. The next second, he heard Empress Dowager Zhuang say, "You will be able to see tomorrow morning. Why make another trip?" This meant that the emperor was going to hold court again. The emperor didn't know what kind of mood he had when he walked out of Rinshou Palace. He asked Eunuch Wei to dismiss the servants and asked Imperial Physician Liang, "Is the Empress Dowager's pulse really okay?" Imperial Physician Liang said, "Yes, Your Majesty. The Empress Dowager's pulse is indeed better than before she left the palace. Her body is much stronger." The emperor suspiciously said, "How can she still be strong after wandering among the people for so long? What about her leprosy?" Imperial Physician Liang shook his head. "There is no leprosy." The emperor frowned. "There is no leprosy. Does that mean she has recovered, or did she not have it at all?" This Imperial Physician Liang didn't know how to judge. He was the one who diagnosed Empress Dowager Zhuang with leprosy. He was sure that he did not make a mistake. Leprosy was an incurable disease, but the Empress Dowager was no different from a normal person. Could it be that there was a divine doctor who cured the Empress Dowager's leprosy? No, leprosy could only be cured in the Yan Kingdom. Forget it. It was useless to delve into this now. Empress Dowager Zhuang had returned safe and sound. The situation was worse than the emperor had expected. He thought that the emperor had secretly eliminated or subdued many of Empress Dowager Zhuang's henchmen during her absence for more than a year. But she had just returned to the palace this morning, and the situation in the imperial city was reshuffled in the afternoon. The emperor urgently summoned several senior officials, but half of them said that they were sick and couldn't come. Most of the few who came were just playing dumb with him. They had sworn to be loyal to him the day before. The emperor was furious, but he couldn't really kill them. If he did, Empress Dowager Zhuang would definitely come forward to save them, and they would be more loyal to Empress Dowager Zhuang. The emperor was so angry that his heart ached, so he summoned the old chancellor overnight. The old chancellor had left a servant in the rented room. The emperor sent someone to summon him, and his servant would come to Baishui Alley to inform him. In fact, the emperor had summoned him several times before. When the emperor was in power, he didn't come. When the emperor was in decline, he came. The emperor was naturally moved. He walked out from behind the desk and held the old chancellor's hand. "I knew it. You are the one I can truly trust." The old chancellor's mood was very complicated. He knew that the time he had been waiting for had finally arrived. If he returned to the imperial court now, he would definitely gain the emperor's absolute trust and respect, but he couldn't be happy. Not only for himself, but also for Lulang. When Lulang entered the imperial court as an official, it meant that he would be the enemy of the entire Zhuang family. It was impossible for him to leave Lulang alone. But could he still treat Zhuang Jins as the former Empress Dowager Zhuang? The emperor said excitedly, "I hereby confer you as the chancellor of the Imperial College. The imperial edict will be announced to the world tomorrow." The old chancellor knelt down and bowed deeply. "I thank your majesty for your grace." Eunuch Wei sent the old chancellor out of the palace. When they passed by the imperial garden, they met Empress Dowager Zhuang's carriage. Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't have a good appetite, and her mood was somewhat irritable. It was the same palace, but somehow, Empress Dowager Zhuang felt lonely. Deep in the palace, it wasn't that she had never been lonely, but this time, there was some desolation. "Empress, why don't you eat some more desserts? You ate too little for dinner." A little palace maid held a plate of delicate and delicious rose cakes and said, Empress Dowager Zhuang had no appetite. The old chancellor stood behind the flower bushes and looked at her fixedly. Empress Dowager Zhuang, who was wearing a phoenix robe, had a fierce aura. Her gaze was like a knife, and even when she didn't speak, she was like an unsheathed sword. No one dared to go against her. Eunuch Wei stopped beside the old chancellor, looked at the old chancellor, and then looked at the Empress Dowager. He whispered, Is Lord Hu going to see the Empress Dowager? The old chancellor shook his head. So what if he saw her? She didn't remember. She would no longer hold a knife to his neck to rob him of his secret stash, nor would she force him to go to the kitchen to make brown sugar glutinous rice cakes for her. Nor would she hide the half-eaten candied fruits in his room. Nor would she bring him along to serve her tea when she went to play cards with Yi Zi. Let's go, the old chancellor said disappointedly. Eunuch Wei looked at the back of the old chancellor. Why did he feel that Lord Hua and the Empress Dowager were a little depressed? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/112729676. HTML Genius remembers the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 269. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that cannot be found on the internet are all available here. The news that Empress Dowager Zhuang could not eat quickly spread to the Zhuang family. Imperial tutor Zhuang was worried that the Empress Dowager's body was not in good condition, and quickly asked the imperial physician to check her pulse. However, the Empress Dowager's pulse was not much of a problem. The imperial physician guessed that it was a heart disease. Maybe, the Empress Dowager has been away from the palace for too long, and is not used to returning suddenly. Imperial tutor Zhuang said coldly. She has lived in the palace all her life. She would not be used to it if she went out. She had returned home. What was there to not be used to? Maybe we can let her family accompany her more. The imperial physician suggested. Imperial tutor Zhuang thought that this was feasible and sent Zhuang Yueshi and Zhuang Mengdai to the palace that night. When Empress Dowager Zhuang saw Zhuang Mengdai, she did not feel much relief. However, when she saw Zhuang Yueshi behind Zhuang Mengdai, her expression suddenly froze. Zhuang Yueshi's clothes were still her gorgeous dress from before, but there was a red peony on the left side of her face. This was the most popular makeup in the capital. Since the court case, the girls in the capital began to put cinnabar on their faces. At first, Zhuang Yueshi did not like this kind of rustic makeup. However, that day, the Empress Dowager touched her left face and said that something was missing. She guessed that it was the current cinnabar makeup that was missing. Thus, she put it on before the Empress Dowager. It seemed that the effect was good. The Empress Dowager really liked it. Empress Dowager Zhuang waved at Zhuang Yueshi. Zhuang Yueshi obediently sat down beside the Empress Dowager. She could feel that the Empress Dowager's attitude towards her was different from before. Since young, she did not like to be spoiled. Although she was excellent in every aspect, it was her idiot sister who was the most favored at home. Even when her eldest brother brought her sister to Jiangnan, he also brought the idiot Zhuang Mengdai. What did you eat for dinner? Empress Dowager Zhuang asked while holding her hand. Zhuang Yueshi was flattered and said, I had some grain porridge for dinner. Empress Dowager Zhuang said, that is not good. You are still growing and should eat more. Servants, serve the food. The palace servants were overjoyed. It was still Grand Tutor Zhuang who had a way. After sending the two young misses into the palace, the Empress Dowager immediately had an appetite. A dazzling array of dishes was presented on the table. Empress Dowager Zhuang did not let the palace maid serve her. Instead, she personally filled Zhuang Yueshi's bowl with food and said, You should eat more. You are too thin. You can't even give birth to a grandson for me. Zhuang Yueshi blushed. Empress Dowager. She wasn't even married yet. Zhuang Mengdai asked in surprise. Empress Dowager, are you going to arrange a marriage for my sister? Empress Dowager Zhuang frowned and looked at Zhuang Yueshi. Arranged marriage? Aren't you married? Ah. Zhuang Yueshi was stunned. Empress Dowager, I didn't. Empress Dowager Zhuang was in a trance. Then who was it that got married? Where was her little grandson? Empress Dowager, are you okay? Zhuang Yueshi held Empress Dowager's hand with concern. Empress Dowager Zhuang couldn't remember. She shook her head and said, "It's okay. Maybe I remembered wrong. Speaking of which, you're 16 this year, and you'll be 17 in half a year. It's time to arrange a marriage for you." Zhuang Yueshi whispered. Yueshi doesn't want to get married. Yueshi wants to stay at home and serve my parents. I also want to accompany you. Empress Dowager Zhuang said. You can go back to your family after you get married. No one dares to wrong the daughter of the Zhuang family. Zhuang Yueshi picked up her chopsticks again, and didn't say anything. Empress Dowager Zhuang still didn't eat much. The joy that Zhuang Yueshi brought to the Empress Dowager when she entered the palace seemed to fade when Zhuang Yueshi said that she wasn't married. Zhuang Yueshi didn't understand what was going on. Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't understand either. The next day, Empress Dowager Zhuang went to the imperial court and listened to the state affairs behind the curtain. The emperor announced the imperial edict to confer the old chancellor as the imperial college's chancellor. Mother, do you have any objections? The emperor turned sideways and looked at Empress Dowager Zhuang behind the bead curtain. Empress Dowager Zhuang's thin lips curled up slightly. You're my old friend. I haven't seen you for a few years, and I miss you very much. The Imperial College will be handed over to Minister Hua. The old chancellor held the ceremonial tablet and knelt on the throne room. It was only a dozen steps, but it seemed to be a distance of thousands of rivers and mountains. Long live the emperor! Long live the Empress Dowager! Empress Dowager Zhuang smiled faintly. I also have an imperial edict to announce. Here it comes. The emperor clenched his fingers. Neither too fast nor too slow. Empress Dowager Zhuang said. The position of the Great Marshal of the world's armed forces has always been vacant. After discussing it with the ministers, Aijia felt that it would be more appropriate to establish one. The great general of agile cavalry is brave and good at fighting, courageous and astute. He has the military armor in his belly. He has the stratagem of the world's armed forces and horses. He is loyal to His Majesty. What do you think, Your Majesty? The world's marshal of Zhao country. Wouldn't it be above Marquis Xianping? Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't object to him conferring the position of the Imperial College's chancellor, which gave him enough face. If he rejected the Empress Dowager's imperial edict, Empress Dowager Zhuang would have a way to stop the old chancellor from taking office. There was a delicate balance between them, but Empress Dowager Zhuang was too greedy this time. The world's marshal of Zhao country? Why didn't she just abolish him and become the emperor herself? Empress Dowager Zhuang said. If Your Majesty has any objections, we can discuss it another day. The emperor's fingernails dug into his palms. Zhen has no objections. The Empress Dowager's intentions are Zhen's intentions. After court, the emperor returned to the palace with an ashen face. Empress Dowager Zhuang also returned to Renshou Palace. Everyone thought that Empress Dowager Zhuang had won, but only Empress Dowager Zhuang knew that she was not happy. The moment she entered the Renshou Palace, the arrogance and willfulness on her face completely disappeared, and she once again fell into endless loneliness. Zhuang Mengdai used to be the closest to the Empress Dowager. In fact, she had noticed something strange about the Empress Dowager. In just 2 days, the Empress Dowager had lost weight. She still remembered that stormy night when the Empress Dowager arrived at the Zhuang family with injuries. At that time, the Empress Dowager's face was rosy, but these days, as long as there was no one around, her eyes would lose their luster. This kind of Empress Dowager made her heart ache. After the emperor angrily returned to Pure Flower's palace, he locked himself up in his bedroom and sulked. Anyone who heard about the court didn't dare to provoke the emperor. But there was one person who didn't hear about the court's bloody storm. Qin Shiyu. These days, Qin Shiyu had been thinking of ways to fulfill his promise to his little classmate, but his older brother the Crown Prince and sister-in-law the Crown Prince consort didn't have the time to take care of him. He had no choice but to beg his imperial father. Imperial father, little Qi misses you. one of little Jing Kong's great methods of acting cute. Don't say anything, just say a few sweet words first. As expected, the emperor's expression softened. He looked at his chubby youngest son and asked, "Why are you here? Don't you need to go to class today?" "The Imperial College is on holiday today." Qin Chuyu sat down next to his imperial father. He was still young, so the emperor didn't restrict him too much. However, he wasn't like this in the past. It was only when he saw how little Jing Kong interacted with his family that he imitated him. Other than the eldest prince, no other son was this close to the emperor. They were like a normal father and son. Qin Chuyu hugged his imperial father's hand. "Imperial father, can I ask you for a favor?" "Emperor, speak." "Qin Chuyu, can I bring my classmate to the palace to play?" Usually, the emperor wouldn't refuse such a small thing. However, he had suffered too much in front of the Empress Dowager today, so he said, "Your grandmother went back to the palace. You know that she doesn't like noise and doesn't like people making noise in the palace. If you guys offend her, I can't take responsibility for you." Qin Chuyu said softly, "Oh, Imperial Father, you can even take responsibility for your country. Why can't you take responsibility for us if we get into trouble?" What a flatterer. The emperor was annoyed and amused at the same time. "You know that you guys get into trouble every time." Qin Chuyu hugged his imperial father's arm and said coquettishly, "Please, Imperial Father, little Qi loves you." The emperor felt goosebumps all over his body. "You're already 8 years old. Do you really think you're 4 years old?" The emperor would never agree. At this point, he couldn't let the Empress Dowager have any evidence against him. Qin Chuyu didn't understand these schemes. He only knew that he had promised his friend, so he had to do it. He clung to the emperor like a long tail. When the emperor went to the imperial study, he went to the imperial study. When the emperor went to the imperial garden, he also went to the imperial garden. In the end, the emperor went to the outhouse. Qin Chuyu quickly followed behind her. Once the emperor made up his mind, he couldn't change it. Qin Chuyu tried his best but still couldn't make his father change his mind. "Let's go back. We have to wake up early for school tomorrow." Qin Chuyu walked forward listlessly. At this moment, he happened to be next to the imperial liquid pool. He didn't notice and slipped, falling into the pool. The emperor quickly tried to catch him. However, Qin Chuyu only fell on the edge of the pool. The emperor missed him and fell into the pool. "Qin Chuyu. He didn't do it on purpose." Eunuch Wei was shocked. "Your Majesty." Although the emperor was saved quickly, he choked on a lot of water and was shocked. He started to feel unwell at night. First he had a high fever, night sweats, coughs, and then he felt dizzy and nauseous. Eunuch Wei went to find Imperial Dr. Liang, but he was told that Imperial Dr. Liang was out of the city. "Zhang, Imperial Dr. Zhang," the emperor said with difficulty. Eunuch Wei sent someone to the Zhang family, but Imperial Dr. Zhang wasn't home either. All of this was too much of a coincidence. Eunuch Wei said, "Your Majesty, why don't we go find Imperial Dr. Li?" The emperor said with a pale face, "Imperial Dr. Li works for the Empress Dowager. Do you think I will trust him?" Eunuch Wei was worried. Then what should we do? How about Imperial Dr. Chen and don't find an imperial doctor? The emperor's eyes turned cold. "Go to the Miracle Doctor Hall and ask him to come here. Remember, don't be too flamboyant. Go there yourself." Yes. It was already so late. He didn't know if the doctor was at the clinic. Eunuch Wei left the palace and went to the Miracle Doctor Hall. The Miracle Doctor Hall was already closed, but there was a doctor on duty in the Miracle Doctor Hall. If there was an emergency at night, he could ring the bell outside. Eunuch Wei rang the bell. The one who opened the door was Dr. Song. Dr. Song yawned and asked, "Where are you feeling unwell?" Eunuch Wei hurriedly said, "It's not that I'm feeling unwell, it's my master. Is Miss Gu here?" Dr. Song had seen Eunuch Wei before and knew that he was a servant of an official. Moreover, the master and servant seemed to know Gu Jiao. Dr. Song said, "Miss Gu has rested. I'll go with you." "No, it has to be Miss Gu," Eunuch Wei insisted. Dr. Song explained, "Miss Gu is injured. It's so late, She can't go on a house call. What happened? It was Xiao Liulang's voice. Dr. Song looked at Xiao Lulang and said, his master is sick and wants to ask Miss Gu to go on a house call. When Eunuch Wei saw Xiao Lulang, his expression froze. Xiao Zhuangyuan? Why are you here? Dr. Song was surprised that the other party actually knew Xiao Lulang, and also knew Gu Jiao. However, he didn't know that they were husband and wife. He said he is Miss Gu's husband. Eunuch Wei was stunned. Xiao Zhuangyuan is actually Miss Gu's husband? Miss Gu is married? Her partner is the new top scholar, Xiao Lulang? When did this happen? Xiao Lulang looked at Eunuch Wei and said, I know. I'll go and tell her. Eunuch Wei's consciousness returned. He didn't have time to think about the relationship between the two. He bowed and thanked. Thank you. Thank you, Xiao Zhuangyuan. The movement outside had already woken up Gu Jiao. When Xiao Lulang entered the room, she had already opened her eyes. Are you going on a house call? She asked. Xiao Lulang paused and said, the emperor is sick. Everyone knew that the emperor should find an imperial physician when he was sick. Since he didn't find one, it meant that he had reached a point where he had to find Gu Jiao. Okay, I'll go. Gu Jiao nodded. If she went, she would be involved in a quarrel. If the emperor couldn't find an imperial physician that he trusted, then there was only one possibility. The Empress Dowager wanted to kill him while he was sick. Xiao Liulang's thoughts turned, but he didn't stop her. He only asked, your injury? It's just a superficial wound. I'm fine now. It was really fine, at least in her opinion. Xiao Lulang took her outer shirt and said, I'll go with you. Gu Jiao thought for a moment and nodded. Okay. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964226/11272852. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.